5 years ago, the world changed forever as dungeons suddenly appeared across the globe, unleashing monsters upon humanity. Even the sacred grounds of Japan were not spared, as strange creatures overran temples and shrines. The appearance of these dungeons was simultaneous, a worldwide event that spilled out a massive number of monsters in an incident later named the Stampede. 5 years later, outside Hokkaido's largest dungeon, Chikaho, a bustling market thrives, catering to adventurers. While lost in thought, Haruki bumps into a much larger adventurer who doesn't even seem to notice him. This is Karaboshi Haruki, a 27-year-old beginner adventurer, observing that the dungeon seems busier than ever. He checks his bag, disappointed to find it empty, with no loot to show for his efforts. In response to the stampede, the government created the official title of adventurer for those who risk their lives fighting monsters in dungeons. Dejected, Haruki walks away, thinking to himself that he needs to work harder. He notices the diverse crowd, guessing some adventurers are just using the title to gain an advantage in job hunting. Suddenly, a popular adventurer known as Tatsun is mobbed by excited fans who read his blog. The scene prompts Haruki to check his own blog, only to be reminded of his own lack of popularity. With the day's fruitless adventuring over, Karaboshi decides it's time to head home. He pulls his car up to his garage, thinking about how the area has slowly recovered from its ruined state. Feeling tired, he begins to lift the heavy garage door. His fatigue vanishes in an instant, replaced by utter shock. Where the floor of his garage should be, there is now a gaping, rubble-strewn hole leading down a flight of stairs into darkness. Haruki's first thought is that a sinkhole has opened up in his garage. But as he looks closer, he recognizes the unmistakable signs. In disbelief, he realizes a dungeon entrance has formed in his home, wondering how and why. His shock turns to despair as he spots his expensive snowplow crushed in the rubble. He cries out in anguish over the loss of his 300,000 yen machine. He collapses, lamenting how hard he worked for it and worrying about how he will shovel snow by hand to survive the winter. While kneeling in despair, he discovers a strange object on the ground. He examines the object, wondering if it's a nameplate, and finds a button which he clicks. The plate suddenly begins to glow brightly in his hands. He feels a strange sensation, as if the object has entered his body. He panics, thinking he's been hit with some kind of foreign contamination. He desperately tries to force the strange presence out. A strange light emanates from him as a holographic display appears. A holographic display materializes, showing his name, Karaboshi Haruki, and other stats. He realizes it must be a skill board. Just then, the sound of engines signals the arrival of military vehicles outside. Military personnel arrive, confirming this is the house with the new dungeon. An officer confirms the dungeon is in the garage and asks for the landlord. Haruki tries to get their attention, but they continue to discuss calling the landlord, completely overlooking him. Finally, he has to state plainly that he is the person they are looking for. Haruki wryly acknowledges that his lack of presence is a lifelong issue, even now that he's an adventurer. To deal with the awkward situation, he presents his license to the officer. He silently vows that one day, he will become an existence that is no longer ignored. The officer tells him it's a good decision not to have entered yet, and that it will be safe after the barricade is installed. The military quickly sets up a barricade around the garage entrance. Haruki is surprised by how fast they work. An officer asks him if he lost anything of value inside. When Haruki mentions the snowplow, the soldiers formally express their sympathies. As the soldiers prepare to leave, Haruki thanks them for their help. One of the soldiers asks if he's about to start training, and Haruki confirms that's the plan. The soldier advises him to be careful, even with the barricade in place. The soldiers salute and wish him Godspeed as they depart. Haruki notes that even while wearing a flashy shirt, he still seems to be invisible to them. He watches the military vehicles drive off into the distance. With determined eyes, he decides it's time to begin. Full of excitement, he declares it's time for some adventuring. He enters through the barricade and descends the stairs. He concentrates, commanding the skill board to come out. The skill board materializes in front of him. He confirms his suspicion that the magic item only works inside the dungeon. Magic items are rare artifacts found in dungeons that have various effects beyond normal human understanding. He studies the skill board, which shows his rank as 8. He deduces that if H is for beginners, then A or S must be the highest ranks and that he can use his skill points to improve himself. He opens a new menu and is amazed to see it structured like a skill tree from a video game. His eyes lock onto one skill in particular, stealth. He has a shocking revelation. His tendency to be ignored wasn't just a feeling, it's an actual skill he likely has at maximum level. He navigates to the special category, wondering what it could contain. He finds a skill called growth rate, which increases the power gained from killing monsters. Without a second thought, he taps the screen, investing all his points. He immediately panics, realizing his mistake. He laments his hasty decision, thinking there might have been other, better skills he could have chosen. He hopes there's a way to reallocate the points later. Deciding not to dwell on it, he resolves to begin his exploration. As he walks deeper, he is struck with awe at the sight of the glowing cave. He wonders if the walls themselves are the source of the light. He tests the wall, finding it hard like clay, and wonders if it's stable. His thoughts are interrupted as he comes face to face with a massive centipede. Haruki is startled by the appearance of the huge centipede. He recalls information from a wiki, identifying it as a slow beginner monster with weaknesses in its antennae and head. He formulates a plan, disable its antennae, then go for the head. The centipede lunges forward to attack. Haruki dodges, surprised by its speed and thinking that the wiki said it was slow. After successfully dodging the attack, Haruki's confidence returns, and he believes the fight will be easy. He launches a counterattack, aiming to slice off its antenna. However, his blade fails to penetrate the monster's thick skin, making a metallic sound on impact. He leaps to dodge another attack. He realizes that even though it's fast, he's still able to dodge it. He resolves to aim for the same spot over and over. He relentlessly stabs at the monster's head, trying to pierce its tough exterior. His blade finally pierces through, dealing a fatal blow. He pants, catching his breath after the difficult fight. Fatigued, he sits beside the defeated monster, reflecting on his first real combat experience. Haruki decides he should harvest the monster's materials before more appear. Suddenly, a sharp throbbing starts in his head. The world begins to spin as he realizes he's experiencing level-up sickness, causing him to collapse and throw up. He finds it strange, as this never happened to him in the Chikaho dungeon. He wonders if his growth rate skill is the cause. He notes that the monster gave a lot of XP for something so weak and considers using its shell for armor. He figures that with this much material, he could probably craft a full set of armor. However, he quickly realizes the pieces are too large to fit in his bag. He then turns his attention to the rest of the monster's carcass. Looking at the glistening centipede meat, Haruki wonders if it's edible. He recalls that monsters are divided into two types, those that can be eaten and those that cannot. He slices off a piece to test it. He hesitantly takes a bite, only to discover that the centipede meat is completely odorless and tasteless. He concludes there's no point in eating something with no flavor. He reflects on the current state of the world, where food shortages have made even vegetables a luxury for the rich. He decides he can save the centipede meat as a last resort. Later, back inside his house, Haruki sits at his laptop. He checks for updates on the popular adventure website, Become an Adventurer, also known as Naru. He muses on the site's usefulness, especially for new adventurers like himself, noting that just visiting it is said to increase one's survival rate. The site features a wiki, a bulletin board for information exchange, and numerous daily blogs. Haruki finishes writing his own blog post, confident that its unique topic will make it popular. An hour later, his hopes of internet fame are dashed when he sees only 3-page views and no comments. Dejected, he slumps over his desk, wondering why no one is reading it and if his page view counter is broken. He laments the lack of an audience for his blog. He feels his blog's quality is on par with those of the top rankers and notices an update from a popular blogger, Bacon-san. He thinks about the perks of being a ranker, who receive corporate sponsorships, free equipment, and money. The narration explains the different types of top rankers, including the popular teacher Bacon-san and the serious, record-holding Masatsugu-san. Haruki wistfully wishes that Bacon-san could teach him and notes Masatsugu's blog has no updates. His attention then shifts to Shigeru-san, the only woman among the top 10 rankers, a famously undefeated swordswoman. Contemplating how cool all the other adventurers are, Haruki feels pathetic in comparison. Overcome with frustration, he begins to sob. He snaps out of his despair, realizing he has no time to feel down when he has his own dungeon to explore. Filled with renewed purpose, Haruki declares that this adventure will surely make him stronger. With a triumphant shout of "Viva la home dungeon," he sets his sights back on the cave. Back in the dungeon, Haruki relentlessly fights his way through more centipedes. After taking down what he estimates to be over 100 of them, he stands amidst a sea of defeated monsters. He feels a bit guilty, as it's starting to feel like bullying. As he continues his exploration, Haruki notes that he has grown accustomed to the level-up sickness. He sketches in his notebook, mapping the dungeon floor. He remarks that he's finished mapping the first floor, just as the ground beneath him crumbles. A massive swarm of centipedes bursts from the walls and ceiling, completely surrounding him. Stunned by the ambush, he exclaims in disbelief. A brief flash shows him running from a centipede. In the present, he effortlessly cuts down the monsters that rush him. A flashback to his first encounter shows his desperation, as he struggled to pierce the creature's tough hide. Now Haruki defeats a centipede with a single hit. He's astonished by his own power, realizing how much he's grown since the previous day when he struggled to beat just one. He attributes this incredible progress to his growth rate skill. Harvesting another monster, Haruki reflects on his progress, having killed over 200. He notes this would be impossible in a competitive public dungeon like Chikaho. Although he's growing rapidly, it doesn't quite feel real. He realizes his physical strength is nearing its limit and that he now needs a new weapon. Having cleared the area, Haruki stands before a staircase leading down. He notes that there was no boss on this floor and that his skill points didn't increase. Undeterred, he eagerly looks down the stairs, ready for his second-floor adventure. As he descends, Haruki recalls hearing that the terrain in this type of dungeon doesn't change until the 10th floor. A diagram illustrates the dungeon's structure, showing that only a small percentage of adventurers reach the more difficult middle and upper levels. Arriving on the second floor, he can't wait to see what kind of monsters live here. As he walks through the strange vegetation, he notices the ground beginning to rumble. The ground erupts around him as large, onion-like creatures burst from the soil, startling him. Haruki is suddenly surrounded by swarms of flying onion monsters, and he screams out in shock and confusion. After the initial shock, Haruki stands in the middle of the onion field, holding one of the defeated creatures, utterly bewildered. The sheer freshness of the onions is overwhelming, and tears stream down his face uncontrollably as he decides he must go home. Back at his home, with a massive haul of onions, he muses that he could monopolize the local vegetable market. His thoughts are interrupted when he discovers his knife has snapped cleanly from overuse. He decides he'll have to visit a weapons shop the next day. Haruki savors a meal, declaring it heavenly. He tells his elderly neighbor, Katori-san, that the eggs from his house are the best and a huge improvement over the centipede meat he'd been eating. As they sit outside, Katori-san wonders if giving Haruki so many onions is all right. Haruki insists it's fine, explaining it's a thank you for all the help and that neighbors should support one another. Holding an onion, Katori-san sadly recalls picking them with his wife before she was killed by a monster. He laments that she passed away before him. Haruki listens with a somber expression. As Haruki gets into his car, he thanks his neighbor for the meal. Katori-san tells him not to worry about it and asks if he's heading out for more adventuring. Haruki confirms that he is. Before heading out, Haruki makes a stop at an appraisal shop. He approaches the counter and, to the clerk's astonishment, dumps a massive pile of centipede shells in front of her. She asks what it is and he points to the pile. Stunned by the sheer quantity, the clerk wonders where he got them all as Haruki requests an appraisal. With a triumphant look, Haruki tells the clerk there are about 200 pieces. When she asks if they are all his, he proudly confirms it. She tells him to wait a moment. After the appraisal is complete, she calls for Karaboshi-sama. She slides a document toward him explaining that the 216 shells without scratches are worth 1,000 yen each, while the scratch ones are 100 yen each. The final amount is 153,800. The clerk, looking stressed, confirms if he is satisfied and explains the money will be deposited onto his IC card. Haruki is overjoyed. With bonus narrow points, the total comes to 161,460. He gleefully thanks the centipedes, noting that he now has enough money for gasoline and ponders his next move. Haruki arrives at a large weapons and armor shop. His face is filled with pure excitement as he takes in the sight of all the gear on display. He browses the shop, admiring a longsword and thinking it would make him feel like a true adventurer. He then imagines fighting a strong monster alone with just a dagger, believing it would make him stand out. His attention is caught by a fancy dagger in a display case. He's stunned to see the werewolf dagger costs 1 million yen. A shop clerk welcomes Haruki as he admires the middle-class equipment. Suddenly, she leans in very close to him, asking if he's interested in the item, which startles him. Haruki becomes incredibly flustered, wondering how she noticed his presence. He feels more nervous around her than he does around monsters. With a pleasant smile, the clerk offers to open the display case for him right away. Overcome with happiness, Haruki eagerly accepts her offer. The clerk tells him to feel free to touch and try the weapon. With his heart pounding, he reaches out. He firmly grabs the hilt of the werewolf dagger. To his dismay, Haruki finds that he can't lift the dagger at all. The clerk explains that weapons made from dungeon materials choose their owners based on aptitude. Since the middle-class weapon didn't work, she directs him to some entry models. She notes their exceptional performance despite the price. Haruki tries one of the other daggers. He finds it a little heavy, but notes that it feels comfortable in his hand. The clerk identifies the weapon as the silver wolf dagger. She smiles, observing that he seems able to equip it. Haruki happily agrees. Haruki asks the clerk if she has to deal with customers who buy items they can't use. She confirms that some people buy based on looks and cost, then complain. She recalls one such customer, whom she taught a painful lesson by flipping him onto the floor. Haruki thinks to himself how tough that must be. The clerk reassures Haruki about the previous customer, saying she won't give a refund. She then asks if he is a mid-level adventurer. She points out that his leather armor is considerably damaged. Haruki denies it, claiming to be just an untalented beginner. She leans in to touch the scratches on his armor. The gesture makes him blush profusely. In a swift, agile move, the clerk hops onto the counter. She tells Haruki that what he's doing is unreasonable. She leans in very close to his face, looking at him with concern, and says she doesn't want him to die. Stunned, Haruki can only stare as she quietly asks if she is being unreasonable. Tears well up in her eyes as she asks if she is weird for thinking so. Haruki vehemently denies it, shouting that she is not weird at all. She then pleads with him to equip better armor, suggesting something bad might happen otherwise. Completely flustered, Haruki blurts out that he will buy it for her. Haruki ends up purchasing a centipede protector and the silver wolf dagger. He also buys a strange-looking mask, bringing the total to 148,500 yen. As he leaves the shop with his new gear, the clerk thanks him profusely. The clerk, Yuyujuki Akin, is ecstatic. She celebrates completing her sales quota. She managed to sell the cursed, non-magical mask that had been sitting in inventory forever. She thinks about how easy her customer was. She decides to go brag to the neighboring store. As she turns, she spots the old, tattered armor Haruki left behind on the counter. Akin recalls that the silver wolf dagger shouldn't be usable by anyone below the middle levels. She frowns, pondering why Haruki would claim to be a beginner when he could handle such a weapon. Meanwhile, Haruki walks away from the shop, horrified at how much money he just spent. He quickly dismisses the thought and arrives at the first underground floor of the Chikaho dungeon, a large cavern teeming with other adventurers. Amidst the crowd, Haruki finds the public dungeon unappealing after his experience in his private garage dungeon. He reflects that he usually has to compete for monsters on the first 2 floors, but he confidently declares that today will be different. Haruki decides to head for the dungeon's deepest level, BF24. As he descends, he checks his status and is surprised to see his skill points have increased. He realizes his deepest floor reached record updated, concluding that he can only gain skill points this way, not from easy floors or outside the dungeon. He encounters a centipede and easily pierces its armor with his new dagger. He's shocked at how weak the monster feels now. He wonders if it's due to the dagger's power, remembering the clerk who sold it to him had said its performance was good, and questions if centipedes will pose any challenge anymore. Feeling confident and energized, Haruki psyches himself up. He resolves to continue. He heads down the stairs toward the 4th floor, noting that there will be fewer people from this point on. He anticipates finding more monsters, but his determined expression quickly turns into one of shock. Suddenly, a creature slams into Haruki from behind, knocking the wind out of him. He coughs and wheezes as the monster, a large horned rabbit, leaps away. Haruki recognizes the monster as a killer rabbit. He clutches his side, realizing the attack was incredibly heavy and that his new armor saved him from serious injury. He can feel the creature's murderous intent and notes that it is far stronger than the centipedes. Wiping a trickle of blood from his lip, Haruki grins, finding the difficult fight interesting. He braces himself as the rabbit attacks again, blocking its powerful kick with his armored arm. The battle rages on as Haruki dodges the rabbit's lightning-fast attacks. The creature is a blur of motion, lunging from all angles. Haruki stays on guard, anticipating its next move. With a powerful slash, Haruki manages to land a decisive blow, sending the killer rabbit flying. The creature hits the ground with a thud, defeated. Haruki catches his breath, sighing with relief that he managed to win. As Haruki recovers, another party of adventurers arrives. They were hunting the rabbit and are annoyed to find it already dead. He's interrupted when he feels the ground begin to shake. The other adventurers argue amongst themselves. One of them yells that a monster parade is coming, and Haruki realizes what they are talking about. The other adventurers shout that there is no point in collecting the decoy. They promptly flee, leaving Haruki behind. He turns to see two heavily armed individuals standing before him, ready for a fight. A crowd of adventurers gathers in a bustling hallway, preparing to descend into the dungeon. A voice calls out, asking a young woman if she is by chance Karen. The young woman confirms that she is Karen. The men are surprised, with one admitting he thought the recruitment post was a troll. The three men introduce themselves as Harrier, Lars, and Shikama. Lars stares skeptically at Karen, questioning her reliability because she barely meets the eligible age for adventuring. The other party members joke that having her along is better than being alone, with a poorly equipped Shikama. Shikama steps in, telling Karen not to overdo it and to just focus on following their lead. Karen agrees to the plan as they head deeper into the dungeon. One of the adventurers explains that since they usually operate below the 9th floor, this should not be too hard. Shortly after, Karen stumbles from exhaustion. Her party members notice her fatigue, remarking that she is a beginner after all. Karen feels sick from the sudden level up after fighting a monster. She asks them to wait for a bit before quickly reassuring them that she is fine now. Shikama comments that she is quite brave for a normal girl. Lars adds that most female adventurers just mess around on the 1st and 2nd floors where it is safer. The party members crouch down, asking if the source of the disturbance is close. Harrier, who is scouting ahead, reports that it is still far but will be here soon. Karen senses the danger and asks what they are going to do. Her party members immediately decide to run for it. Confused by the sudden retreat, Karen asks why they are running. Shikama yells back that it is a damn monster parade. A monster parade is defined as a large migration of monsters, and it is highly recommended for adventurers to retreat. Seeing the danger, Karen realizes she needs to run. She watches in horror as her party abandons her. Karen screams for them to wait, realizing they are leaving her behind. Her former party members curse her for being a crazy newbie. An argument breaks out between the men. One feels he can't leave her, but another points out the sound of fighting up ahead. The others shout that they cannot wait, or the monsters will catch up to them. As Karen struggles to catch up, she wonders why they are arguing. The three men turn and ready their weapons. Karen is shocked, thinking they are actually going to fight. She feels a surge of relief, glad to be with such strong people. She resolves to get behind them so she does not interfere. Karen begins to run towards her party members. As a rockslide blocks the path behind them, the men turn their attention forward. Karen is pushed to the ground, shocked and unable to speak. Shikama smirks cruelly, telling her that she is going to be a decoy. Reflected in her terrified eyes, one of the men says they should get out of there. She reaches out a hand, weakly calling for them to wait as they run away. She turns her head in shock, the reality of her abandonment sinking in. Karen lies helpless on the ground as dozens of killer rabbits surround her. The monsters close in, their sharp horns glinting. A memory of a terrified girl flashes by as she desperately pleads for someone to save her. Haruki sprints through the dungeon, noting that the sound of commotion is getting louder. He peeks around a corner and sees the massive horde of monsters. He spots Karen alone and surrounded by the horde. Seeing her terrified face, a look of determination appears on his own. He resolves to act now, even if he can only help a little. Haruki accesses his skill board and with a desperate plea, wills himself to become stronger. The killer rabbits leap at Karen, ready to attack. Haruki, now wearing his mask, appears in a flash, cutting down the monsters and saving Karen at the last second. He swiftly moves to protect Karen from the oncoming horde. The bodies of defeated rabbits fall through the air as he continues his assault. With each slash of his dagger, more monsters fall. Haruki unleashes a powerful spinning attack, clearing the area around him. He thinks about how just one skill point made such a difference. Despite his body feeling hot, sick, and his head aching, he knows his strength has increased dramatically. A wide, joyful grin spreads across his face as he exclaims that this has become so fun. As he continues to fight off the horde, he shouts that this is true adventuring. After the battle is over, he stands exhausted, catching his breath. Haruki surveys the field of defeated monsters, breathing heavily. He mutters to himself, tired but glad that he survived. Karen hesitantly calls out to him from behind. Startled by her cry, Haruki asks if his mask is the problem. He apologizes for her strange noise and considers taking off his mask. Overcome with tears, Karen grabs his arm and thanks him profusely for saving her. Karen explains through her tears that she really thought she was done for, leaving Haruki speechless. As he comforts her, Haruki feels relieved that she is still alive and that he could help. Karen thanks him for helping with the material collection and introduces herself as Karen Kurosaki. He introduces himself as Haruki Karaboshi, while Karen privately wonders if he will ever take off the mask. As they prepare to head back up, Karen offers to carry one of the bags. She asks if Haruki is a Sapporo ranker, but he insists he is just a beginner. Karen is shocked, finding it hard to believe a beginner could charge into a monster parade and survive. Haruki explains that his power is thanks to his skill board. He adds that he passed a party of 3 guys on his way to the monster parade and asks if she knows them. Karen explains they were the ones who recruited her on a website, saying she thought they would help her level up. Her voice trails off as she grips her staff, remembering their betrayal. Haruki states that an adventurer's job is to protect people and that he cannot forgive those who abandon the weak. He acknowledges that sometimes comrades must be abandoned, but those guys were different. He recalls their callous decision to use her as a sacrifice to ensure their own escape. Haruki declares that their actions cannot be forgiven. At a shop counter, a woman excitedly tries to get her colleague's attention. She boasts that her store's income has gone up by 200%, much to the visible annoyance of her coworker with glasses. The woman with glasses tells her seriously annoying colleague to shut up. She retorts that seniority based on years of service is nonsense when they are both branch managers. The long-haired woman declares that results are everything and calls her colleague an elder, which leaves the other woman fuming. The woman with glasses apologizes for her outburst. Their argument is cut short as they both turn to greet a customer with professional smiles. Haruki and Karen are stunned into silence by the clerk's sudden change in attitude. Haruki asks to sell some materials, and the long-haired woman is startled. She internally recognizes the masked customer from her own store. Both clerks stare in disbelief at the enormous pile of killer rabbit horns on the counter. Karen estimates there are around 100 horns, which shocks the clerk with glasses. The other clerk realizes this is far beyond a beginner's level, deducing that he must have defeated over 100 rabbits in just one afternoon. The clerk thanks them for waiting. She confirms the appraisal for 101 horns is 202,000 yen and asks Haruki if the assessment is acceptable. The clerk then asks if he wants to use the team division feature, which confuses Haruki. Karen explains it's a good deal that splits the payment and includes service points. Understanding, she tells the clerk to proceed. Haruki objects, stating that Karen only helped carry the horns and didn't fight at all. He suggests they just split the payment for the 48 horns Karen carried. The long-haired clerk is shocked, realizing that Haruki must have defeated the entire horde by himself. The clerk with glasses refuses to pay out for only 48 horns, and her colleague yells at her to come back. Haruki watches, confused by the woman's actions. The long-haired woman angrily asks why she did not just calculate it, and her colleague whispers that it would mean working overtime. The clerk with glasses explains that their branch is strict about overtime, and she wants to avoid trouble. Her colleague becomes enraged, calling her stupid and slow. She quickly apologizes to Haruki and asks him to wait a moment while she takes over. The long-haired clerk efficiently processes the transaction. She returns, exhausted but successful, and informs them that the adjusted amounts have been deposited into their accounts. As they leave, Haruki thanks the clerk, recognizing her from the store he visited earlier. Inside, the woman with glasses confronts her colleague, demanding to know what she was doing. The long-haired woman shouts back that he was a major customer. The long-haired woman argues that it is the customer who pays, so their satisfaction should be prioritized over the boss's commands. Her colleague accuses her of being rude and threatens to report her to their superiors. Unfazed, the long-haired woman says she does not care and predicts a time will come when her colleague will thank her. She smirks, confident in her decision. As Haruki gets into his car, Karen calls out to him. She asks how she can possibly repay his favor. He dismisses her concern, saying he saved her because he wanted to. Tearfully, she insists, asking if there's anything she can give him, no matter what it is. Haruki is taken aback by her earnest plea. Haruki panics, hoping he is misinterpreting her offer. He hopes her words are coming from a place of pure gratitude. The thought of teaming up with an 18-year-old girl fills the 27-year-old Haruki with a sense of social dread. Haruki reassures Karen not to worry about it. He drives away into the night. Karen watches him go, a little forlorn. He arrives at his hotel room. He reflects that he had no confidence he could make the drive home tonight. Exhausted, he collapses onto the bed. He sits up, suddenly realizing he was wearing the mask the whole time. It dawns on him that this is why the hotel receptionist was so frightened. He recalls his odd behavior and realizes how scary he must have looked. He takes off the mask, looking at it with a new understanding. He thinks about his usual zero presence and how wearing the mask allowed him to finally feel like he existed in others' view. He holds up the mask, believing it to be a godly item, and heads to the bustling, rugged tavern. Haruki sits at a table, excited to finally be at the popular tavern. He notes the high price of 2,000 yen for a medium mug. However, he decides today is a special occasion and happily places an order. He overhears another adventurer talking about seeing a guy wearing a disgusting mask. The adventurer describes him as a total beginner, confirming to a shocked Haruki that they are talking about him. He is thrilled to realize that he was seen and became a topic of conversation. To celebrate losing his thin-as-air presence, he stands up and orders another beer, startling the people at his table. After his drink, he decides it's time to go back to the hotel. He writes a blog post titled "Road to a Notice Presence," detailing his encounter with the monster parade. He sits on his bed, feeling confident that his post will get some attention. He remembers that Karen also keeps a blog. He finds her blog. Her latest post is titled "I Was Saved," and in it she vows never to forgive those who abandoned her. She ends the post with a simple, heartfelt thank you to the one who saved her. He sees that his blog has been bookmarked by 1043 readers. He gets up from the computer. Overwhelmed with emotion and with tears in his eyes, he decides it's time for bed. On an online forum, users discuss the monster parade, with many expressing disbelief and calling the survivor a liar. The forum user asks a pointed question: if the individual couldn't be identified, how did the other blogger know his name? The sun rises over the city. Haruki wakes up and immediately checks his laptop. He stares at the screen in disbelief. His post has 5-page views and 3 bookmarks, and the critical comment has been posted. He jumps up, celebrating the first time he's ever been bookmarked. He clenches his fist, feeling that his noticeable presence has finally increased. He begins packing his bag, planning his day of dungeoneering and leveling up before heading home. He stops, a sudden realization dawning on him: going home would be a bad idea. He realizes he needs to meet the girl again and worries about how to find her in the crowd. Suddenly, he hears someone call out his name, Haruki-san. Karen greets him and he stammers a good morning back. He's shocked that she found him, marveling that it's the first time anyone has ever called out to him. She explains with a smile that his mask makes him stand out. He touches his face in horror, realizing he forgot he was wearing it. Internally, he praises the mask as an amazing, godly item for its low price, while Karen wonders why he seems so flustered. He has a sudden realization, and Karen begins to tell him about the men from yesterday. Karen calls his name, trying to get his attention. A group of adventurers surrounds them, and one points him out as that guy. He sternly tells a nervous Karen not to move from her spot. The group of adventurers approaches. He thinks to himself that it is just as he thought. He realizes they came to silence Karen to stop her from telling others about their actions, concluding they are disqualified as adventurers. The adventurers who abandoned Karen look on in disbelief, recognizing the masked man. The crowd of onlookers parts, creating an arena for the confrontation. Haruki stands ready, protecting a terrified Karen. He assesses the multiple threats surrounding them, realizing that if he dodges one attack, another will be waiting. Haruki scans his opponents, looking for an opening and a way to resolve the conflict. One of the adventurers attacks with blinding speed. The force of the blow knocks Haruki's mask aside, revealing part of his face as he braces for the fight. In a flash, a massive sword descends, shattering the attacker's weapon and sending him flying backward. The sudden intervention leaves Haruki and his companion stunned. A man in ornate white and silver armor stands between them, his intense gaze sweeping over the scene. He demands to know the cause of the uproar. The onlookers and the young woman with Haruki recognize the newcomer in awe, identifying him as the hero, Masatsugu. The young woman marvels at how Masatsugu appeared so suddenly, she couldn't even track his movement. The defeated adventurer scrambles to his feet, pointing at Haruki's group and accusing them of pushing his party into a monster parade where they nearly died. Haruki listens with a grim expression, understanding the situation. The crowd murmurs about the serious accusation. Masatsugu turns to Haruki and asks if the story is true. The adventurer continues his fabricated tale, claiming they used the young woman as bait before fleeing. The memory of the actual event leaves the girl looking distressed. The other adventurers protest, asking Masatsugu if he really believes their accuser. Masatsugu calmly states that he believes nothing yet. He points out a critical fact: they drew their weapons against other people, an act that implies guilt. One of them desperately claims it was self-defense. Two armored guards arrive on the scene asking what happened. The adventurers who attacked grow nervous. However, the guards are fans of Masatsugu, and the tense situation diffuses. The young woman asks Haruki if things worked out, but he expresses his doubts. The police escort the guilty adventurers away without any trouble. With the situation resolved, Masatsugu turns to Haruki and asks for his name. Startled, Haruki introduces himself as Karaboshi Haruki, also known by the alias Air. Masatsugu compliments Air, noting his strength. He astutely observes that Haruki has an amazing skill for erasing his presence, guessing that it has become a habit from hiding in dungeons for a long time. Haruki is flustered by the accurate, yet incorrect, assumption. Masatsugu also compliments Haruki's sharp eyes. He then gives a stern warning, advising Haruki to stay away from the city for a while. He explains there is a real possibility of an assassination attempt against him. Masatsugu clarifies that he will handle the rogue adventurers. Haruki worries about causing trouble for Masatsugu and tarnishing the reputation of all adventurers. Masatsugu admits he is also troubled, as any association with them would be damaging to his own name. Masatsugu informs them he will be in Ryehoro for a while and can be left to handle the matter. He reminds them to keep in mind how rotten those adventurers are. As a crowd of fans swarms Masatsugu for autographs, Haruki and his companion make their escape. Having gotten away, Haruki examines the item Masatsugu gave him. He realizes it's the first time he's ever seen someone else's status screen. Seeing a rare chance to learn from a top ranker, he eagerly studies the information. The impressive stats of Saoki Masatsugu are displayed before him. Haruki is completely overwhelmed by Masatsugu's A-rank status and high points. He is especially shocked by a skill called Divine Protection, speculating that it might be a revelation from a god. He despairs, realizing that a top ranker's stats are so far beyond his own that they are impossible to use as a reference before the screen vanishes. As Masatsugu departs, Haruki reflects that he was at least able to check his skill tree. Suddenly, the young woman finds him and urgently pleads for him to take her to the dungeon. Haruki is left speechless by her sudden request. She clarifies she means the dungeon at his home. She then reveals that she knows he is Ersan, the person who wrote the blog article titled, "A Dungeon Appeared in My Home." Haruki is completely shocked that his identity has been discovered. She explains that she often reads the newest articles on the Naru blog. Haruki is flustered, realizing he's face-to-face with one of his very few readers. Despite his protests that his town is remote and has nothing to offer, she insists that the dungeon is all that matters. Her determined expression convinces him. Haruki remembers that she is also an adventurer, just as determined as he is. He understands she knows the fear of losing something important. With his mind made up, he agrees to take her to the dungeon. They drive off together. Several minutes later, after a cheerful start to their drive, the reality of the location sets in. As they drive down a long, empty road, the young woman nervously laughs, remarking on just how remote the countryside really is. Upon arriving, she is amazed to see that there truly is a dungeon inside his garage. While she thinks it's nice to have a dungeon right outside one's home, she asks where the town's trade-in store is. Haruki bluntly informs her that, being in the remote countryside, there is no such thing. She is horrified to learn there isn't even a weapons store. Haruki explains it lost out to online shopping. They agree to take a peek inside the dungeon. She recalls from his blog that centipede monsters appear here. He warns her to be careful as they can break her armor, and he takes a closer look at her gear. Haruki analyzes her equipment, a simple robe, leather boots, and a root staff. He realizes that root staves destroy monster materials, making them unpopular for dungeon diving. He deduces she's an adventurer maniac who browses blogs and wikis but chose her weapon without understanding its practical downsides. He finds her choice interesting and decides to ask her about it later. A giant centipede appears. The sight startles the young woman. Haruki calmly tells her it's all right since they aren't very strong. Seeing a rare opportunity for her to practice, he encourages her to try hitting it. She nervously accepts the challenge. She shrieks in fear, asking how he can be so calm while he points out the creature's head is its weak point. He asks if she doesn't feel disgusted, admitting he finds them cute. She is horrified by his comment and begs him to stop, feeling she'll die from goosebumps. Haruki sternly asks if she plans to avert her eyes every time a hideous monster appears. He warns her that while centipedes aren't lethal, other monsters are, and looking away out of disgust could get her killed. He challenges her to decide if she is a scared girl or an adventurer who will face reality. Her grip on her staff tightens with resolve. With a determined cry, she brings her staff down hard. She crushes the centipede's head. Afterward, she looks nauseous. Haruki notes that the level-up sickness is quite horrible. Seeing her state, he asks how long she has been an adventurer. She is shocked to learn he only started this year, just like her. She asks how he became so strong, wondering about his background. He explains his strength comes from the convenience of having a dungeon at home, allowing him to hunt constantly. He tells her she'll get stronger by defeating more centipedes, which fires her up to exterminate them all. She fights relentlessly. After what Haruki estimates is her 100th kill, she collapses from exhaustion. She admits it's still dangerous to face them alone. Haruki observes that this experience is what separates those who grow quickly from those who do not. Panting and exhausted, she asks for a break, and Haruki agrees. He watches her, impressed by her guts and hard work, noting that she hasn't complained once. He decides he should help her out a bit. She checks her status screen and is horrified to see that her magic-related stats are all still at 0. She despairs, wondering what she'll do if the centipedes start appearing in her dreams. Haruki stared in disbelief at the status screen, questioning the existence of a skill like magic power. He realized this was the skill all adventurers had been anxiously waiting for, and it was right in front of him. Haruki was overcome with a thirst for knowledge, desperate to see and understand this new ability. He deduced that she was deliberately hiding her power, trying to avoid using the skill. He noticed her skill board was identical to his own. Meanwhile, a group of adventurers discussed the dangers of revealing unknown information, as novices lack the power to defend against malice. A tearful Karen was taken aback by his indirect approach. Gathering his courage, Haruki approached Karen and asked if she could use magic. Karen, on guard, demanded to know why he was asking. Realizing his direct approach was a mistake, Haruki quickly tried to cover by commenting on her armor. He nervously added that he thought magic girls wore dresses, a detail he hadn't known. He then explained his logic, reasoning that if magic weapons exist, magic skills must as well. Karen explained that it would be dangerous for anyone but an advanced user to make such an ability public. She asked why he thought it was dangerous. Haruki understood she was well informed and protecting herself. He accepted her explanation and checked his own stats. His own magic-related skills were still minimal. Haruki reflected on his own luck, considering that meeting Karen and her magic power might be destiny. He decided to take a gamble. Karen wondered what he was doing. Suddenly, the ground began to shake violently. Haruki was startled by the sudden tremor, wondering if it was an earthquake. Sensing danger, Haruki urged Karen to get out. They ran through the narrow passage. He heard a breaking sound. Karen worriedly suggested it might be a monster parade of house centipedes. Haruki knew that while not individually strong, they are deadly in large numbers. To their horror, a giant centipede emerged before them. Haruki was shocked, recognizing it as a poisonous high-power monster that should only appear on the 8th floor, not the 1st. Haruki yelled for Karen to fall back. As the monster closed in, he warned her to watch out for an attack from behind. Karen turned in alarm. Haruki warned Karen that the giant centipede was targeting her. He realized that giant centipedes were not supposed to be here. It was a rare mutant species, which could be even stronger than a floor boss. Haruki struck the creature, but his attack was deflected. He realized its shell was incredibly hard. The centipede retaliated, knocking him back with a powerful blow. He was left frustrated and vulnerable. Frustrated by his inability to damage the monster, Haruki could only watch as it loomed over him. The giant centipede's massive jaws prepared to strike. The centipede was about to crush Haruki. Just then, Karen stepped forward with a look of intense determination, ready to unleash her hidden power. With the giant centipede defeated, they stood in the aftermath of the battle. They had found the dungeon's exit stairs. Karen looked on in amazement, exclaiming her awe at what they had accomplished. Emerging from the dungeon, they took in the beautiful scenery. Karen remarked that it was the first time she had ever appreciated such a view. Haruki noticed a small building in the distance that hadn't been there when they entered. They approached the building and discovered it was a newly constructed Mitsubishi weapons and materials shop which hadn't been there before. Haruki found it strange, noting that a store would usually open after market research and that this one looked prefabricated. Haruki was happy to have a place to sell their materials, and they entered the store. Inside, a lone woman sat behind the counter. The sound of a vacuum cleaner hummed in the otherwise empty shop. The woman welcomed them to the empty store. Haruki recognized her as someone who used to work at Sapporo's store. Upon being recognized, the woman burst into tears, shocking both Haruki and Karen. The woman lamented her fate, crying about why she had to end up in such a remote place. Haruki, seeing that she was completely different from before, tried to leave. However, Karen stopped him, reminding him that a woman was crying in front of them. She tearfully complained that what happened to her was cruel and felt like harassment. She explained that despite her good sales, she was demoted for buying materials from another store without permission. She begged him not to use the word demoted. Through her sobs, she asked if they were buying anything. She then angrily declared that being sent there didn't mean she was incompetent. Haruki presented their haul. The shopkeeper was surprised to see a giant centipede shell among the materials. She offered to buy the 96 house centipede shells for 1,000 yen each, and then asked if he was sure he wanted to sell the giant centipede materials. The shopkeeper noted that armor made from the giant centipede's shell would be a significant upgrade. However, Haruki insisted on selling. He explained that he barely survived the battle. He reasoned that he needed to get stronger before he could properly use such advanced equipment. The shopkeeper, understanding his reasoning, suggested he keep 2 pieces for the future and offered to buy the rest. The final price for the materials came to 138,000 yen for the house centipedes and 40,000 for the giant centipede pieces. Haruki requested to split the earnings half and half, but Karen immediately protested. She insisted that Haruki should get a lot more. She argued that she couldn't have hunted the house centipedes without his help. The shopkeeper, annoyed by their bickering, told them to decide already. She impatiently asked them to hurry up. To resolve the argument, Haruki proposed a deal. He would take half the money today, and in exchange, Karen would tell him what she wanted to talk about. Karen agreed to the terms. The shopkeeper complained about the strong afternoon sun, while Haruki noted her incompetence at anything besides work. With their deal settled, Karen presented another item for appraisal. She presented a slimy bag that came out of the giant centipede's stomach. While Karen was disgusted by it, Haruki seemed unfazed as he placed it on the counter. The shopkeeper examined the item and asked if they wanted a simple or detailed appraisal. The shopkeeper explained the difference. A simple appraisal would cost 1,000 yen, and she could do it herself in a minute, while a detailed appraisal would be done at headquarters. The detailed appraisal would be done by experts at headquarters, costing 100,000 yen and taking a month. Given the options, Haruki chose the simple appraisal, as she made it clear the item was a magic bag. After a quick look, she speculated it might be a magic tool. She confirmed it was a magic bag with an interior the size of a classroom and offered to buy it for 100 million yen. Haruki and Karen were shocked by the 100 million yen offer. The shopkeeper calmly explained that transportation prices are extremely high these days, justifying the price. Despite the tempting offer, Haruki thought it over and decided they would keep the magic bag. The shopkeeper agreed that keeping it was the better choice. Later, Haruki brought Karen to his house. He invited her inside. She was impressed by the building. Karen was surprised to see a computer, which he explained was powered by solar panels that gave him free electricity. Karen expressed her jealousy over his unlimited electricity, as most households have restrictions. Haruki invited her to sit down. He offered her a glass of water. Her eyes sparkled at the simple gesture. He told her she could drink. She eagerly took a drink. After taking a sip, Karen sighed in contentment. She exclaimed that it was delicious. Haruki commented that after this, she wouldn't be able to drink tap water anymore. He then realized his mistake with a start. He had forgotten something important. Karen brought up the topic she wanted to discuss. Haruki remembered her using her power against the centipede. He confirmed he knew she could use magic, and she apologized for hiding it. He reassured her, saying it was the right thing to do because it would be dangerous if others found out. He added that adventurers should be free to have fun without restrictions. Haruki encouraged Karen to use her magic as much as she liked in his private dungeon. He explained that using it would help her capacity grow and that he also wanted to see it. Thrilled by the idea, she declared she would start the next day. Eagerly, Haruki asked if she could use it now. She apologized, explaining it's difficult to use her magic outside of the dungeon. When Haruki asked when she first used it, Karen admitted she didn't know for sure. She explained that she just got a feeling she could while holding her weapon in the dungeon. She confirmed that magic flows better from her staff. Haruki theorized that the magic power must come from the dungeon itself, with her acting as a medium and her weapon storing the energy before its release. Karen asked if that was all he wanted to talk about. Haruki said he had one more question and asked where she was staying for the night. She smiled and simply replied that she would be staying there. Haruki was left speechless, spilling water everywhere. Haruki was completely stunned by her casual declaration. As if reflecting his shock, lightning flashed outside, illuminating the house. On a popular online forum, adventurers discuss the recent defeat of the first-floor boss. As they speculate on who accomplished the feat, a user named Masatsugu casually announces his return. His post sparks a flurry of questions from other users about the reward and how he managed it. Masatsugu answers the flood of questions, confirming the subjugation and describing the boss as a lizard variant. His attention then shifts, asking if anyone knows the name of an interesting person in Sapporo who is skilled at hiding his presence, piquing the curiosity of the other forum members. Haruki is completely taken aback by Karen's question about where he's staying. She asks if he has an extra room, to which he stammers a reply. She then declares her intention to stay, much to his shock. She reassures him that she won't be surprised by anything she finds, but he vehemently denies having a room. Haruki collapses onto the table in defeat, thinking about the implications of an 18-year-old girl staying with him. Karen asks if they are at Karaboshi's house, noting it is the first time she has seen his face. Haruki explains that his house is right in front of the dungeon, making it the first line of defense against a stampede. He emphasizes his duty to remain vigilant as the only adventurer in town, though Karen questions this since he lives alone. Haruki explains that with two of them, one can watch the dungeon entrance while the other stays prepared, and suggests she stay at a hotel as part of the job. Karen understands and agrees to his logical reasoning. Haruki is internally overjoyed, feeling like he's been saved. He was terrified of how quickly rumors could spread and ruin his reputation in the countryside. Haruki agrees to take Karen to a hotel for the night. For the next 3 days, he and Karen hunted centipedes inside the dungeon. They defeated 100 each day and sold the materials. By the end of their training, Karen's magic had improved so much that she could handle 2 or 3 centipedes simultaneously. Haruki then considered his own progress. He was thrilled to see that his dagger skill had grown without him assigning any points. He realized it must be a form of natural growth. The fact that a skill could improve just by hunting monsters was a huge and exciting discovery for him. Karen lands a final blow, bringing their total to another 100. Haruki suggests they stop for the day and take a break tomorrow. Though visibly exhausted, Karen insists that she can still keep going. She explains that she wants to level up too and asks if he has something else to do. She quickly apologizes, realizing she has been relying on his support, but he tells her not to worry and to take a break instead. Haruki insists that rest is important, telling her even a guard rests 1 day a week. Karen reluctantly agrees. The next morning, Haruki prepares to enter the dungeon. He feels it has been a while since he went solo. He admits to himself that he doesn't want to lose to Karen's rapid growth. He acknowledges that rest is crucial, as an adventurer's body is their most important asset. He passes through the first floor, ready for any emergencies. He moves through the second floor, considering it part of an adventurer's job to be prepared. The third floor seems no different from the others. As he wonders if he can reach the fourth floor, a small creature appears. He is confronted by a black raccoon, a monster known for its high mobility and powerful claws. The black raccoon lets out a fierce cry. It lunges at Haruki with incredible speed. He is shocked by how fast it is. He notes that it is even faster than the killer rabbits he's fought before. However, he remains determined, believing he can still defeat it. Haruki dodges an attack from the swift raccoon. He realizes that despite their speed, the creatures are manageable. He decides to take them on, striking down one of the raccoons. After a long battle, he estimates he has defeated around 100 of them. As a result, he leveled up 6 times and filled his backpack with tanuki meat. He happily thinks about making tanuki soup when he gets back. With the smaller monsters taken care of, he heads for the 4th floor. As he walks down a corridor, he senses the presence of the floor boss. He is startled to see a massive raccoon blocking his path. Haruki observes that the boss doesn't have any minions, making it a one-on-one fight. The giant raccoon lets out a terrifying roar. Haruki grins, excited for the challenge. The boss attacks, and Haruki is surprised that he manages to stop its powerful claw. The boss swipes again. The attack leaves a deep gash across his chest plate. Exhilarated by the fight, Haruki faces the boss head-on. He dodges and strikes, determined to win. After a grueling battle, he stands victorious over the defeated monster. Suddenly, the dungeon begins to shine. Haruki recalls reading on a bulletin board that this light signifies a first-time boss defeat. He knows that defeating a boss for the first time should yield a special item. However, his sword sinks into the ground where the boss was. Before he can extract any materials, the boss's body is swallowed by the earth. The boss dropped a huge raccoon claw and a piece of what looks like iron. He decides to get the rare items appraised later. With the boss defeated, he prepares to move on to the 4th floor. He checks his status and is surprised to see no change in his skill points. He reads the requirements and learns that points are only gained by reaching new floors or beating rare monsters, confirming that skills can also grow naturally. He notices something new on his skill screen. He has acquired a new skill called Imitation and wonders if it allows him to copy enemy movements. He finds the new skill very interesting. However, he decides not to assign any points to it just yet. He then continues his descent to the 4th floor. He marvels at the pretty, dark green scenery of the 4th floor. His old job instincts kick in, and he starts analyzing the colors in printing terms. He quickly shakes his head, blaming his time working at a printing company. He wryly calls it an occupational disease. He spots a flower and feels a sense of familiarity, thinking he's seen it before. He tries to remember what the plant is. He gets a closer look at the bud. He suddenly realizes it's a potato, just as the plant fires it at him with explosive force. He realizes the dungeon provides onions, potatoes, and meat, declaring it a wonderful dungeon. He imagines that if he can conquer this dungeon, he'll be able to eat loads of rice and curry. The plant wilts after firing its shots. Haruki is disappointed to find it only had 40 bullets and gathers the potatoes, which are useless to him without more. A much larger plant, the floor boss, reveals itself. Haruki correctly guesses that the 4th floor boss is a giant potato. The boss plant fires 3 shots simultaneously, forcing him to dodge. The constant barrage of potatoes keeps him from getting any closer. He takes cover, wondering if a boss has infinite bullets and lamenting the waste of potatoes. After firing about 100 potatoes, the plant finally wilts, and Haruki finds its attack surprisingly weak. With the boss defeated, Haruki looks forward to his first-time special reward. He returns to the shop, but is surprised to find it closed. He hears someone hammering inside. He calls out and discovers the shopkeeper boarding up the door. Disappointed, Haruki decides to just go to Sapporo instead. The shopkeeper frantically stops him, telling him to wait. She complains that he killed a lot of monsters again. He nonchalantly replies that it was just 100. She asks what his reward was and if he ever gets tired, to which he admits he is very tired. Calling him crazy, she impatiently asks to see the results of his appraisal. The boss's claw is appraised at 5,000 yen, but is too big to be used as a weapon. The magic iron, however, is extremely durable and valued at 100,000 yen per kilogram. The shopkeeper explains that a kilogram of it is enough to make around 10 strong weapons. Haruki then turns his attention to his other loot. He asks her what the pile of potatoes is worth. The shopkeeper bluntly tells him they are stones. Haruki confirms that is all she has to say about them. He protests that they are a boss drop, but she inspects one and declares its price is 0 because it's just a hard, potato-like rock. She muses that if it were not a simple appraisal, it might turn out to be a magic tool. But she cheerfully insists that they are just stones. However, her attention shifts to the jar, which she identifies as a super rare magic tool. Haruki is overjoyed at the revelation. His excitement quickly turns to confusion. She asks if he used the jar to transport the rocks, and he confirms that he did. She explains that the jar multiplies whatever is placed inside, estimating this one multiplies items by 100 kilograms. She laments that if he had put a bar of gold inside, it would have turned into an endless fountain. But now the jar is just full of multiplied rocks. The shopkeeper laughs maniacally, calling it a container that generates trash. Haruki collapses in despair, surrounded by a mountain of useless rocks. Meanwhile, back at his house, Karen wonders how Haruki is doing in the dungeon. Haruki is still in shock from his blunder with the multiplying jar, surrounded by a mountain of worthless rocks. The shopkeeper tries to snap him out of it, telling him to behave. When Haruki asks what the jar would have been worth if he'd put something valuable in it, she casually mentions 1 trillion. The astronomical figure sends him into a fresh wave of despair, while she attempts to cheer him up by promising good items in stock the next day. The next morning, Haruki is still agonizing over his mistake regarding his blog's single like. His brooding is interrupted by a cheerful Karen, who greets him enthusiastically. She's ready to head to the dungeon, asking if he has a new strategy for the lower floors. Haruki, remembering the shopkeeper's words, decides they should visit the armor shop first. Remembering the shopkeeper mentioned a restock, Haruki and Karen head to her store. Inside, the shopkeeper Akin is seeing an elderly client out. She tells the man to call her if anything happens before turning to her new customers. Akin asks why only Karen is there, not noticing Haruki standing right in front of her. She teases him for erasing his presence so effectively, and Haruki notes she seems more relaxed than he expected. With a sudden burst of energy, Akin tells them to hurry up and buy everything she has. Akin lays out a full set of new equipment for them. Haruki tries on the gloves and finds they don't slip, making them good for holding weapons. He then questions if the boots are the right size, and Akin confidently confirms they are. She reveals she measured his footprints to get the size right. Impressed, Haruki calls her amazing, but she corrects him, insisting he call her Akin-sama. Karen looks over a short sword and a rod while trying on her new clothes. Meanwhile, Haruki attempts to lift a heavy weapon but finds he can't. He tells Akin he can't use it, and she confirms it's from the dungeon. She explains it's a mysterious item whose details are unknown even to her appraisal skill. Akin complains that people treat her shop like a warehouse, forcing her to sell such items. Just then, Karen emerges from the changing room, and her new gear fits perfectly. Haruki asks Karen to try lifting the heavy rod he couldn't move. The shopkeeper asks if he'll buy it if she can, and he agrees, depending on the price. To everyone's surprise, Karen lifts the rod with ease, remarking that it feels really good. Akin is jealous that Karen can equip such a high-level weapon, and quotes a price of 1 million. Haruki immediately tells Karen to put it down, but Akin tries to stop them. She holds him to his promise to buy it if Karen could equip it. They begin to haggle, with Haruki arguing it's a drop from the 20th floor and should be cheaper. After some back and forth, they eventually settle on a price of 35,000. Haruki picks up a short sword and finds that it's completely dull, thinking it must be trash. Akin explains that it's not trash but a cursed sword. She clarifies that it's a magic weapon that becomes sharper the more monsters it kills. Haruki is ecstatic, declaring it a god-tier item and wondering why it's here. Akin explains that nobody buys it simply because it's a dagger. She elaborates that few adventurers are reckless enough to use a dagger as their main weapon. She impatiently asks if he's going to buy it or not. Haruki hesitates, but Karen encourages him to purchase it. Akin quotes a price of 1 million. As Haruki turns to leave, she desperately grabs him, pleading for him not to go and offering it for cheaper. They settle on a price of 300,000. Afterwards, Haruki asks if he can place an order in the store. He requests a knife for dismantling and medicine for adventurers. As they walk away, Karen asks Haruki if he defeated the boss. She clarifies that she's asking about what happened yesterday. He's momentarily confused, before realizing she must have read about it on his blog. Karen tearfully asks if she's being a burden. Haruki is taken aback and reassures her that's not the case, explaining he was just adventuring without thinking. With renewed determination, Karen tells him she just wants to get stronger. She wants to get stronger as fast as she possibly can. Haruki understands her feelings, knowing what it's like to be treated as if you're not needed like air. Inspired by her resolve, Karen enthusiastically declares that they will hunt every single monster they can find today. Haruki agrees to her plan with a resounding yes. Newly equipped and motivated, Haruki and Karen dive back into the dungeon. They fight together seamlessly, taking down multiple monsters at once. They face off against ferocious raccoon-like monsters. Haruki thinks to himself how great their teamwork is. While he's used to fighting solo, he finds that this collaborative play is also interesting, as Karen provides magic support from the rear while he handles the front. Karen finds Haruki collapsed after the battle. She scolds him for pushing himself to the point of collapse. She reminds him he could have been in real danger, and he apologizes. He tells her that at any rate she has become much stronger. Karen, delighted, comments on how well her new rod transmits magic. Karen insists that Haruki reflect on his reckless behavior, but he simply promises to be more careful next time. As he gets up to leave, Karen calls out to him. Before she can finish, the ground begins to shake violently. The sudden earthquake catches them both by surprise. The earthquake stops as suddenly as it began. Haruki comments that it wasn't a big earthquake and that the surface is probably fine. Unfazed, he immediately declares they should get back to hunting, much to Karen's disbelief. Later, they return to the shop and present Akin with a ridiculous amount of materials. She is aghast to learn it's a total of 352 intact drops. Karen is amazed at how much her magic bag can hold. Akin, overwhelmed by the mountain of materials, wonders if they hold a grudge against her. Haruki then casually asks if she felt the earthquake from a while ago. She looks at him blankly, having not noticed it at all. A montage shows a ruined city, contrasting with a peaceful memory of Haruki and others enjoying a meal. The narration explains that something sudden and unexpected had occurred. On that day, an event took place in dungeons all across Japan. Massive, unprecedented monster stampedes occurred everywhere. Karaboshi Haruki jolts awake in his bed, a look of panic on his face. Without a moment's hesitation, he grabs his gear and rushes out of his room. He arrives at the entrance of a dark, foreboding dungeon, an overwhelming sense of dread washing over him as he realizes the situation is bad. Haruki urgently calls the K-City police station, reporting that something very weird is happening in the dungeon near his house and asks them to come at once. He promises to follow the defense force's instructions when they arrive. He then makes another call, apologizing for the early hour to someone staying in another room. A sleepy Karen answers the phone. Haruki quickly warns her that a stampede might be about to happen, telling her to get prepared and join him immediately. Startled but resolute, she agrees. Having hung up, Haruki worries if she'll be all right, given how suddenly he woke her. Haruki checks his phone, confirming his fears. Just then, a familiar voice asks what he is doing up so early. He sees that online access to adventurer forums has spiked. He turns to see Akin approaching. Akin greets him, explaining that as a legendary shopkeeper, she's up early to check on purchases. Haruki cuts her off, urgently demanding to buy all of her medicines. When she asks what happened, he gravely tells her a stampede is occurring. Akin's demeanor instantly changes, and she tries to flee, wanting no part of the trouble, but Haruki stops her. Haruki points out that as an adventurer, she'd be called to help regardless. Akin tries to argue, questioning if she ever even claimed to be an adventurer. Just as he presses her to sell him the supplies, Karen arrives fully equipped. She announces she heard about the stampede and asks if they are safe. Inside, Haruki explains that the stampede is happening everywhere, with monsters appearing at different times. He instructs them to explain the situation to the defense forces when they arrive, as he wants to stay and defend the area. With a determined look, he announces he's going out to find the boss monster, leaving both women stunned. Akin protests that his plan is too dangerous. Haruki explains his reasoning, believing there's another way to stop the stampede. He plans on eliminating the boss leading it, and he will recon first to see if it is possible. Realizing his plan, Karen insists on going with him. Haruki firmly tells her no, instructing her to stay behind. Haruki bluntly calls her a burden, leaving her shocked. He quickly clarifies his reasoning. He explains that his ridiculously small presence allows him to move through monsters undetected. If Karen were with him, they would be spotted immediately. Akin reminds him he was forbidden from doing anything reckless again. Haruki puts on his mask, assuring her he understands. As he walks away, Akin remarks that it sounds like he's humming. Karen agrees, sensing his strange excitement. Arriving on the scene of a battle, Haruki observes other adventurers fighting fiercely against the monster horde, thinking to himself that they are totally nuts. The battle is a chaotic scene of adventurers and defense forces working together to hold the line against swarming monsters. A skilled adventurer assesses the situation, noting the low level of the defense forces. He feels confident they can manage with the adventurers' help. He spots a group of terrified civilians and leaps to their defense. He shouts for them to get away from the danger, leaving them swooning over his heroism. The adventurer takes a call from someone named Bacon, who asks if everything is all right. Bacon asks for Masatsugu's location, and the adventurer replies that he's in Hokkaido, which seems to be unexpected news. He reports that they are managing, but mid-level monsters are beginning to appear. Bacon promises to send 10 more strong members and tells the forces on the ground to hold on. After hanging up, he reviews an online newsfeed filled with desperate pleas for help from all over Japan, realizing there's still much to be done. The online bulletin board is a flurry of messages from across the country, showing a mix of dire reports and attempts at coordination. Inspired by the calls for help, adventurers rally together, determined to save Japan. Elsewhere, Haruki runs alone through the dark dungeon, feeling a sense of scary excitement. Haruki checks his status, noting he has 2 skill points remaining and plans his next move. He silently observes a horde of various monsters ahead, relieved that his low presence keeps him hidden from them. However, he spots a pack of silver wolves that have noticed him. He figures they must have a superior sense of smell. Assessing the distance, he questions if he can defeat them. He decides to act, preparing to throw something from his pouch. Haruki hurls several potato stones, which explode on impact. He realizes he can do this. He grins, realizing his new items are incredibly useful. Now that he has a way to deal with the weaker monsters, Haruki focuses his assault entirely on the silver wolves. He unleashes a barrage of his explosive potato stones. The stones find their mark, hitting the wolves directly. He reasons that the defense line can hold back the smaller fries, leaving him free to deal with the more significant threats. He continues to throw stone after stone. A maniacal grin spreads across his face. With one final mighty throw, Haruki creates a massive explosion that decimates the monster ranks. The effort leaves him completely spent, and he collapses to the ground, panting for breath. As he lies on the ground, Haruki feels unwell. A towering figure emerges from the dust. He looks up, wondering if it's the boss. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes it's not just a giant silver wolf, but something far worse. The creature is a werewolf, a rare and powerful mid-level species of silver wolf. Faced with this terrifying opponent, Haruki grits his teeth. Overwhelmed by the werewolf's power, Haruki believes there is no way he can win. In a moment of panic, he turns and flees for his life. The werewolf is too fast. It closes the distance in an instant and throws a devastating punch, sending Haruki flying through the air. He looks up in absolute despair, cursing his fate. Haruki crashes hard onto the ground as the werewolf closes in. Its sharp claws are ready to strike. A mysterious figure in armor leaps from above. The figure draws their sword to intercept the attack. The werewolf's eyes widen in surprise. The powerful werewolf looms over him, its attention now on the newcomer. Lying on the ground, Haruki looks on in disbelief, realizing his situation is still incredibly dire. The scene is chaotic as civilians and soldiers work together, frantically building a sandbag barricade to hold back the monster onslaught. A young adventurer strikes down a monster. She turns to a nearby soldier with concern to ask if he is all right. He confirms he is and thanks her. She observes that it's been 5 minutes since the stampede started, but so far only small creatures have appeared. The defenders note that the number of monsters is manageable, and they have enough people to handle them. The situation seems strangely subdued for a stampede. A worried Karen wonders if this has something to do with Karaboshi. An older adventurer, Kitoro-san, tells her not to worry so much. He reassures her that as an adventurer, he and everyone else are giving it their all. Karen steels herself, remembering all the time she spent leveling up in the dungeon, feeling she's no longer the helpless person she once was. Just then, a large monster smashes through the barricade, and Karen prepares to use magic, believing she can take it down. She has a sudden, horrifying realization that she's outside the dungeon. The monster charges towards the terrified civilians. The group, including Kitoro-san, is frozen in fear. Karen screams for it to stop, feeling helpless. In a flash, a woman with cat-like ears appears, dispatching the monster with ease and saving the civilians. Karen can only stare in shock at the sudden rescue. The woman orders everyone not to get distracted and to fix the barricade immediately. Karen rushes to an injured man, offering to help. The woman stops her, scolding her for trying to touch an open wound with her bare hands. The woman angrily questions if Karen is trying to spread an infection. She states that no one would have been hurt if Karen had been defending the barricade. Karen, stunned, tries to protest, but the woman tells her not to play dumb. She tells Karen to stop blaming others for her own weakness and to treat the injured instead of wasting time talking. Karen confronts the woman, asking why she isn't fighting alongside everyone else. The woman calmly replies that she is busy protecting her store. Another adventurer intervenes, telling Karen that while the woman has a point, she should focus her energy on getting stronger for the next stampede. The defenders at the barricade rally, shouting to brace themselves and not let a single monster pass. Inspired by their determination, Karen shouts in agreement. Elsewhere, deep in the dungeon, Haruki lies on the ground, groaning in pain. Haruki, defeated and disarmed, desperately considers his options against the towering werewolf. He knows adding a single point to agility won't be enough to win. He realizes if he escapes, the monster will get out and could kill someone else. The thought of someone dying because he ran away is unacceptable. He resolves that he cannot allow that to happen. With renewed determination, Haruki forces himself to his feet to face the beast. The werewolf seems to mock him, asking why he looks so happy, so human. Haruki charges forward. He is swiftly knocked aside by the creature's powerful blow. He struggles to block the follow-up attack, gritting his teeth in pain. Haruki realizes that simply defending is the most he can manage against the werewolf's overwhelming strength. But he forces himself to focus, to look closely and anticipate the next attack. He finds his opening and strikes. His focus pays off as he slowly begins to perceive the monster's movements. He starts to track its center of gravity. Despite the growing numbness in his body and the miserable feeling, he starts to adapt to the fight. Despite the pain and his bleeding leg, he finds the struggle to be fun. A manic grin spreads across Haruki's face. He exclaims that it feels great, leaving the werewolf taken aback by his bizarre reaction. He dodges a swipe and lands a slash of his own. Haruki's adaptation allows him to find small openings, and he starts landing attacks little by little. He is already planning his next move, a kick. He attempts the kick, but the werewolf is too fast and sends him flying. Haruki collapses to the ground, panting heavily, knowing the next attack will be the end. He glances at his status screen one last time. As the werewolf lunges for the killing blow, Haruki stands his ground, his eyes wide with a strange mix of fear and resolve. In an impossible burst of speed, Haruki dodges under the werewolf's claws and leaps into the air, twisting his body for a counterattack. He lands a vicious slash across the werewolf's back, and follows through with another brutal strike to its head as he lands, the impact sending shockwaves through the air. The force of the final blow sends the werewolf reeling. Haruki is thrown to the ground from the impact. The werewolf, grievously wounded, stumbles back. The beast's eye reflects a final image of its determined foe before it collapses. Lying exhausted on the ground, Haruki admits to himself that the fight was a little fun, but he's had enough. The defeated werewolf seems to offer a final, faint grin before it dies. A single tear escapes Haruki's eye. Haruki lies motionless on the dungeon floor. A system notification appears, showing his proficiency in several skills, including one-hand sword and throw, has increased from the battle. As Haruki begins to stir, he feels a heavy weight on his stomach. Looking down, he is surprised to see Karen lying unconscious on top of him. Karen awakens and cries out Karaboshi's name in sheer relief. Through tears, she tells him she couldn't find him anywhere. She was terrified that he had been eaten. A groggy Haruki apologizes. He asks what happened outside. Overcome with emotion, Karen smiles through her tears, wiping her eyes and telling him that it's finally over. The crisis has passed. At the barricade, adventurers and civilians celebrate their victory. Everyone has survived the stampede. Across the country, news spreads that the stampedes are ending. Adventurers on a forum discuss the situation, noting that according to the wiki, killing the boss monster ends the event. They comment on the difficulty, as the boss is a rare species. Forum members joke that only a pervert named Masatsugu would be crazy enough to hunt down the boss. Masatsugu himself replies, objecting to the label. While Sapporo is reported safe, concern grows for the situation in Shinjuku, as contact with someone named Bacon has been lost. A grim update appears in the log for Masatsugu to read. Shinjuku was destroyed. The image reveals a city in ruins, overrun by dragons and giant monsters. Soldiers survey the aftermath of the battle, confirming that all the monsters are accounted for. One man wonders why the attack ended so suddenly, while another recalls that online information suggests defeating the boss monster ends a stampede. Nearby, a soldier calls out to a young lady, relieved to see she's all right, but he and his comrades are left wondering who is responsible for their victory. The soldiers are taken aback, realizing the stampede ended right after he entered the dungeon. The young lady proudly announces that it was Karaboshi-san who defeated the boss. His modest demeanor only makes Haruki panic internally at the unwanted attention. When they ask if he is a friend of hers, the soldiers are impressed. He laments that he has completely failed to avoid this kind of public development. As the crowd chatters about him, Haruki wonders why they insist on denying his existence, feeling as though he's a taboo subject. The story of his deeds develops on its own, with the crowd fawning over the young girl instead. Watching from the sidelines, Haruki feels dejected and considers just returning home. She becomes overwhelmed and pleads for help. Suddenly, Haruki appears, dragging the massive corpse of the werewolf boss. He introduces himself as Karaboshi and presents the beast as the stampede's leader. The crowd is stunned by his sudden arrival. A woman named Akin arrives, and Haruki asks her to dismantle the creature for materials. He adds that he wants to place a few orders. Akin's eyes gleam with avarice as she intensely questions Karaboshi about the cost of his order and whether he has enough money to make it worth her while. Seeing her aggressive negotiating tactic, Haruki grimly declares that this means war and calls for Karen's help. 1 hour later, Akin is in disbelief. She begs Karaboshi to tell her it's a joke. She shrieks at the sheer amount of work before her. She pleads for him to stop. As Akin screams in financial agony, Haruki triumphantly holds up a special coupon for becoming an adventurer, which grants him an additional 5% on the transaction. Later that night, Haruki reflects on what he learned about the failed subjugation at Shinjuku Station. The area is now occupied by monsters. He recalls that despite the great adventurers present, the failure was due to a series of misfortunes. The fall of Shinjuku spread shock and despair across Japan in the blink of an eye. Contributing factors included the absence of the military's strongest fighter, Masatsugu, the simultaneous appearance of monsters in 63 locations, and the sudden disappearance of Masatsugu's replacement, Bacon. As a result, other adventurers withdrew to save their own lives. The next day, Karen notes how hard the situation in Shinjuku must be. She wonders what will happen to Japan. Haruki reads on his device that Masatsugu-san wrote about a recapture operation on his blog. He believes the top ranker will be okay. Karen looks on worriedly, knowing Haruki feels powerless to help. Haruki acknowledges that at their current level, there's no way they can be of any help. He resolves that the first thing they must do is get stronger. With renewed determination, he immediately begins a rigorous training regimen. During training, Haruki confidently declares that countering potato monsters is an easy win. Karen, however, struggles to find her target. He explains that it's all about timing the attack with the plant's firing nozzle. After he teases that it might be too much for her, she defiantly shouts that she will do it. Determined to prove herself, Karen prepares her attack. She unleashes a powerful blow that completely obliterates the potato plant, leaving Haruki utterly shocked. Karen proudly asks what he thinks of her performance. Haruki, however, is devastated, crying out that she killed the potato plant before it could shoot anything, meaning they won't get any potatoes. He laments the loss of his precious vegetables. He warns her that the ghosts of wasted food will come to haunt her. Trying to console the distraught Haruki, Karen frantically suggests that he can make a vegetable garden with potato plants at home. A new idea sparks in Haruki's mind. That night, Haruki returns to the dungeon. He begins carefully digging up the potato plants. His replanting operation is a success. He marvels at Karen's smart idea to mass-produce potatoes. Now that the soil is prepared, all he has to do is wait and see. The next morning, Haruki yawns as he goes to greet his potatoes. To his horror, he finds them all withered and dying. He panics, thinking they might not be able to live outside the dungeon after all. He notices that one plant is still alive and desperately wonders how he can help it. The plant's leaf seems to weakly point towards a small jar on a nearby shelf. Understanding the plant's gesture, Haruki asks if it needs the jar. He places the plant's root into the container. It immediately revives, its leaves and flower becoming vibrant and healthy, much to his astonishment. Haruki exclaims that the plant is much better now, its aura completely changed. He realizes it must have needed the potato stone, an item from the dungeon boss, for nutrients. The plant seems to nod in agreement. Haruki is shocked to discover it can understand what he's saying. Overjoyed at the thought of communicating with a plant, Haruki holds it up. He asks if it has a name. The plant shakes its stem, indicating it does not. He decides to give it one since it's a rare occasion. He suggests Spuddy, only to be promptly slapped by a leaf for the uninspired choice. After his failed attempt, Haruki racks his brain and suggests the name Rhea. The plant seems to adore the name, its body glowing with approval. Haruki smiles, noting that it seems to like it. Haruki apologizes to Rhea for bringing her to his home. He explains that he had a reason for wanting to mass-produce potatoes. He presents a potato he'd harvested from one of the other plants, only for it to wither in his hand. He asks in alarm if this means she can't make fresh potatoes anymore. He wonders if it's his fault. Rhea confirms that it's his fault and that he must now take responsibility. Utterly defeated and realizing the gravity of his actions, Haruki bows his head to the ground in apology. While hunting in the dungeon, Karaboshi suddenly calls out. The sudden shout startles Karen, who asks what's wrong. After 2 hours of hunting, she suggests a break. He seems distracted. Karen notices that his mind has been somewhere else for a while. She hopes he doesn't forget to support her in combat. Karen worries about him, wondering if she can be of help. Meanwhile, Haruki is agonizing over his new responsibility to the plant Rhea, comparing the experience to taking a bride. Karen overhears his frantic words and thinks the situation is serious. After a productive day, they part ways. As Karen watches Haruki leave, she feels a sense of worry. She had thought of him as a strong person, but now she sees she was wrong. She recalls how he went to the stampede alone and how he claimed it was reasonable to fight for hours without stopping. Karen thinks that he's missing something. She believes it's the reason he was acting so strangely today and resolves to find out what is troubling him. Karen follows Karaboshi to his home. Peeking inside, she overhears him talking to someone named Rhea. From her perspective, his words sound incredibly suggestive, causing a major misunderstanding. Her mind goes into overdrive. Her imagination runs wild, conjuring images of Karaboshi living with a girlfriend. She pictures them whispering sweet nothings and planning romantic adventures together. Inside, Haruki is actually talking to the plant Rhea about applying a bit of fertilizer. He is suddenly startled by a noise. He turns around to find Karen has fainted on his floor. On a dungeon-defeating wiki, users discuss the situation on floor 1582, questioning if a certain Masatsugu has arrived and the difficulty of organizing a recovery operation. The online discussion continues, with one person sharing information about an accident in a dungeon in Chicago and asking if anyone can help. A user responds harshly, declaring that all adventurers must be ready to die and that it is their own responsibility if they enter a dungeon alone. After reading the callous online comments, Haruki closes his laptop. A young woman shouts his name in alarm, demanding to know why there is a monster in the house. Haruki calmly tries to placate her, introducing the small flower creature as Rhea. He explains that he brought her from the dungeon, much to the woman's horror. The woman insists that Rhea is still a monster, but Haruki defends her as not being a bad girl. He argues that even a monster could be a friend, a notion she rejects completely. He challenges her, asking what the difference is between Rhea and the adventurers on Chicago's 13th floor. He explains his belief that the decision of who is friend or foe should not be based solely on their species. Rhea suddenly lurches forward, smacking Haruki on the cheek, but he insists she is a friend. The woman declares it an attack, while Haruki insists it was just an expression of affection. Unconvinced, she decides to uproot the plant, forcing Haruki to quickly intervene. The next day, Haruki reflects on persuading Karen to stop, wondering what to do with Ria now. He spots his neighbor Kidora-san and calls out to him, offering to share some meat. Kidora-san shows Haruki some splendid giant asparagus, revealing he only planted them last year. Kidora-san explains that the asparagus grew so thick after he used compost made from the monster meat Haruki brought him. Intrigued, Haruki asks if he can have some of the compost. Kidora-san agrees and also hands him a strange object he found inside the meat. Returning home, Haruki calls out to Ria, who is still sulking from the previous day's incident. Haruki offers the new soil to Ria to try and cheer her up. Ria perks up immediately, delighted with the new compost. He then presents another gift, a magical stone. He explains that it's a rare item with no known uses, and Ria seems to eagerly desire it. Haruki playfully asks Ria for a thank you for the gifts. She turns away shyly, refusing to respond. He relents with a smile, admitting it's his fault for bringing her to his home. The scene flashes back to him and Karen fighting off a pack of large, menacing wolves in the dungeon. In the past, Haruki notes that Karen has become considerably stronger, surpassing him in pure firepower. However, thanks to his growth acceleration skill, he still levels up faster. They arrive at a shop and present their massive haul of 350 silver wolves to the clerk. The clerk calmly agrees to process the large order. After inspecting the materials, she states the purchase price will be 187,500 yen. She also presents Haruki with the dismantling knife he had requested, and she offers to sharpen it for him. Back in the present, Haruki asks her to please sharpen the knife. As she works, he and Karen wait. She returns with the sharpened blade. Haruki notices her subdued demeanor and asks Akin what's wrong, pointing out her lack of energy. Akin admits that even she can't be energetic all the time. Haruki persists, saying her behavior is out of character. Seeing his interest, she decides to tell him her story. She explains that the branch manager of the Sapporo store has gone missing. Her IC card history revealed that she had entered the Chikaho dungeon. Haruki asks how long the manager has been missing, and Akin replies that it has been about 5 days. He realizes that with only a record of her entry, it's not enough information to pinpoint her location. Akin correctly guesses that he is considering going to help her. Karen chimes in, reminding him how incredibly strong Akin is. Akin explains that she has a store to run and expresses disbelief that her co-workers are taking a break just because the manager is missing. Haruki and Karen quickly apologize for prying. Akin then asks what he plans to do. Akin asks if he would accept an adventurer request from her. Haruki is thrilled at the prospect of his first official request. Akin formally requests that he search for the branch manager in the Chikaho dungeon, down to the 8th floor. Akin explains the manager entered the dungeon to secure silver wolf materials for a manufacturer's deadline. Since silver wolves appear between the 6th and 8th floors of Chikaho, she believes the manager is in that area. Haruki realizes it might be impossible to find her, as after so much time, there might not even be any bones left. Haruki expresses his doubts, stating that searching isn't one of his strong points. Akin insists that he is the right person and suggests a deadline of 1 month. Haruki considers that the manager would be prepared for a long stay. He is about to accept the request but suddenly stops himself. Akin slumps onto the counter in disbelief, asking why he stopped when he was about to accept. Haruki explains that he has circumstances that prevent him from leaving his house. Hearing this, Akin mutters about how selfish all adventurers are. Akin yells that adventurers talk about helping others, but then they disappear when another adventurer gets into trouble. Haruki counters, asking why she is trying to get him to go when they are so far away. He tells her that if she really wants to save the manager, she should ask the adventurers in Sapporo. Karen points out that he can't leave the house because he's worried about Ria. She then asks why he doesn't just bring the flower pot along with him. The simple solution leaves Haruki stunned. Karen reminds him that Ria is still a monster. Karen admits that she wasn't sure about Ria at first. However, she tells Haruki that she believed him when he said Ria was all right. With tears in her eyes, she declares that she trusts him because they are partners. Her heartfelt words leave Haruki momentarily speechless. Haruki acknowledges that while the missing branch manager isn't his immediate concern, he can see that Akin is suffering. Moved by the situation, he gently pats Karen's head. He announces to Akin that he will accept her request. Her demeanor instantly brightens upon hearing his acceptance. Haruki accepts the quest, but with the condition that Akin must pay both the request fee and a rescue fee. She enthusiastically agrees, promising to pay 300,000 yen now and another 200,000 upon his success. As Haruki and Karen prepare to leave, Karen turns to him and offers her thanks. Haruki seems hesitant to respond. Haruki tells Karen she has nothing to thank him for. He explains that seeing someone like Akin, who is always boasting about being the best, worry so much about somebody else, made him want to help too. Karen is touched by his words as Haruki clarifies that it was her words that truly made him want to take the quest. Now that the decision is made, he suggests they make their preparations and figure out the details of their plan. Akin watches them go, a gentle smile on her face. She is relieved, thinking to herself that someone will finally go search for that idiot. Akin reflects on her missing manager's actions, calling her a fool for going into the dungeon by herself just to meet a deadline. A sly, satisfied smile spreads across her face as she chuckles to herself. Akin strikes a dramatic pose, declaring that it's because of hopeless people like her manager that talented employees like herself get to shine, proclaiming her the darkness that makes her look good. Looking out the window, Akin vows that she will not let her manager die, because Air is heading out to save her. Hearing this selfishly motivated declaration, Karen is utterly terrified. Haruki announces to Ria that they are going out for the day. He tells her they are headed to Chikaho's dungeon, which he has not visited in some time. A car beeps as it unlocks for Karen. Inside, Ria sits secured in a container in the back seat. While driving, Karen shares that silver wolves are mainly on floors 6 and 7, which shouldn't be too much trouble. Haruki agrees, but notes things could be different starting from the 6th floor. She also mentions the presence of traps like bear traps and pitfalls, which while not lethal would be a problem if they got stuck. Karen observes that since the monsters are the same but the difficulty increases, it's almost like a game tutorial. Haruki considers her perspective, thinking of it as a game. He muses that from the dungeon's perspective, it seems to lack any ulterior motive to lure people in just to kill them. Haruki says that while he wants to rush, they should take it easy for now. Karen asks how long it will take to get to the required floor, mentioning that word on the street is about a month. Ria seems to wonder if they will make it in time. Haruki states with determination that they have to, no matter what. They pull up to a large building. Karen asks what they are doing, and Haruki suggests they go inside. They have arrived at a store called Black Dragon Tavern, which is having a promotion. The store is filled with various items with dubious claims, such as increasing stamina or detecting monsters. Haruki is overcome with excitement at the selection of niche goods. He observes that since science has declined, the occult has become mainstream. He notes that there is no scientific proof that any of the items work. Still, he decides it is better to be prepared. He discovers a bucket of slimy eels, which have a testimonial from an adventurer who claims they helped him escape monsters. The item's description explains that it is effective for 1 day after opening the seal, while it produces slime. Haruki decides to take 4 of the eels, just to be sure. He finds Karen and asks if she found anything good. Karen shows him a basket full of cheeping creatures, explaining that while she dislikes them, she thought they might be useful later. A note warns that monsters may notice them. Karen admits that she kind of likes the creatures, but Haruki doesn't think they qualify as a justifiable expense. They arrive at the entrance to the 4th basement floor. Haruki swiftly takes down a monster. He recalls that the 4th floor's boss was a giant killer rabbit. Its resistances were on a completely different level compared to other monsters. Haruki recalls that Karen has never fought a boss before. He tells Karen that this rabbit seems stronger, but she should be able to handle it herself, promising to help if it gets dangerous. As Karen concentrates, Haruki notes that her magic increases with her focus and will be far stronger than any of his attacks. While Karen fights, Haruki wonders if he should assign some skill points before they reach the 6th floor. As he scrolls through the status screens, he stops short. He stares in disbelief at Ria's status screen. He is shocked to see that Ria's gender is listed as female. Karen unleashes a powerful magic attack, defeating the rabbit boss. She turns around, excitedly proclaiming that she did it. Suddenly, she looks confused. Haruki congratulates her on the win, but then asks if something is wrong. Karen says she feels a little weird. She explains that she can see the dungeon very clearly and can even see him better. Haruki, looking menacing, asks her to repeat what she just said. She quickly changes the subject, exclaiming that she must have leveled up, making her senses sharper. Haruki lets it go, and Karen wonders if the boss dropped an item. Haruki explains that his sight isn't the only thing that has changed. He added a point to his detection skill, which should be handy on unknown levels. As they walk toward the next floor, Karen notices something. She points out a large patch of weeds growing in the area. Haruki agrees and suggests they should check it out. Haruki notes that the dungeon's hue is gradually getting richer. Karen suddenly shouts that something is coming. Haruki realizes that with faster detection, they won't lose the initiative. A pack of silver wolves emerges from the foliage. Haruki and Karen charge forward to meet the threat. Haruki fights off the wolves. Standing over a defeated wolf, he remarks that they're no different from the ones in his garage dungeon. He asks Karen if they should proceed to the 7th floor, but she says no. He decides they should find the boss while mapping the area and turn back if it's too difficult. Haruki asks Karen if she can see a trap, and she confirms she can, though not clearly. He then declares it should be all right to proceed. He deliberately walks into the trap, sliding into a pitfall as Karen calls out his name in alarm. Karen worriedly asks if he is all right, and he replies that there are no problems. She exclaims that there are a lot of problems and demands to know why he triggered the trap on purpose. He explains that he wanted to know how the mechanism of the traps works. Karen points out that there could have been spikes at the bottom of the pit. Haruki frantically explains that now they know the pit's diameter and that it's empty. Karen thinks to herself that there is definitely something wrong with Karaboshi-san. They then spot a giant wolf, which they presume is the floor's boss. Karen asks what they should do. Haruki observes that it would be easier if they had a tank, as there are 5 pitfalls that would be difficult to avoid while fighting. He weighs his options, wondering if he has enough power to fight while avoiding the traps. He turns to Karen and asks her to promise that she won't tell anyone what he is about to do. Karen agrees to his request. Haruki announces that he is getting Ria out of the magic bag, much to Karen's confusion. He notes that Ria has 8 skill points he can use. He pulls up her status screen to allocate the points. He thinks that while he doesn't know what treasure house means, it's worth a shot. He takes Ria out and apologizes for keeping her cramped inside the bag. He asks a cranky Ria if she can take ammunition from the jar. Ria's flower buds produce several small stones. Haruki praises her, delighted that the skill worked. Haruki tells Ria to shoot the boss with all she's got when he gives the signal. Karen watches, thinking she will have to cover them if something goes wrong. Haruki begins the countdown from 3. He gives the signal, and Ria unleashes a powerful volley of projectiles. The attack completely destroys the smaller black wolf, leaving Haruki and Karen stunned. Haruki marvels at his adoptive daughter's strength, especially since she is less than a year old. Karen is shocked, wondering how Ria got so strong so quickly when she wasn't like that before. Haruki calls Karen over. He reveals his ability to see multiple status screens at once. He tells her that this is his secret. Karen asks if it's a magic tool, but he explains that he can use it to unlock the latent potential of people. He warns her that if the world finds out, terrible things could happen to her, so she must keep it a secret. He tells her that he is only revealing this because it's her. Karen is flustered by his trust in her. She eagerly asks to see her skill tree and wants to develop her magic power. She begs him to put all 3 of her skill points into magic power, even as he warns that it could change her senses too much. Haruki reluctantly agrees to her request. He allocates the points, boosting her magic power, compatibility, and manipulation. Karen is amazed by the incredible feeling of power. She excitedly declares that she will defeat the next floor's boss, but Haruki advises her not to be in such a hurry. Suddenly, a look of horror appears on Haruki's face. Karen has just defeated the 3 bosses from the 7th floor. She is shocked that she defeated them all simultaneously in an instant. Haruki hesitantly calls out her name, stunned by what he just witnessed. Karen is terrified by her own power and apologizes. Haruki suggests they hunt small fries until she can control it, admitting he doesn't want to get involved and die. Later, they emerge from the dungeon, completely worn out and tired. It is already 6 p.m. They have been in the dungeon for over 5 hours with no clues about Wizo-san, making it more likely she is below the 7th floor. Haruki thinks that they shouldn't hurry, and that if they want to make it to the 8th floor, they need to lay the proper foundations. At a trading post, a clerk thanks Karaboshi-sama for waiting. The clerk presents the estimate for the furs and fangs, asking if the total price is acceptable, and mentions adding an extra for Air-sama. The final price is 46,305, and the clerk asks to divide it between Haruki's team. The woman informs Air-sama that the items he ordered have been completed and asks him to stop by the armor store next door. As they enter the armor store, an enthusiastic shopkeeper welcomes them. The shopkeeper ecstatically recognizes him as Air-sama. She explains that she heard about him from her senpai, Yuatsuki. She relays Yuatsuki's message that if a pervert in a mask appears, he's her subordinate and should be treated politely, which prompts Karen to angrily clarify their relationship. The shopkeeper, unfazed, presents the protection equipment for 2 people that Yuatsuki had ordered for them. Haruki tries on the new Ikai series armor, wondering if Yuatsuki seriously ordered something so expensive. Karen tries on her breastplate and finds that it fits perfectly. Haruki realizes the armor is made from the centipede monster they fought long ago. He exclaims that the timing is incredible, and the shopkeeper agrees, stating that Yuatsuki's ability is reliable as she is an expert in this field. Haruki thinks that the armor considerably reduces their risk of being killed. He asks how much it costs, and the shopkeeper replies that it's free of charge. He asks what she means, and she explains it is a covered expense. She elaborates that they asked many adventurers for help, but nobody wanted to, as all the strong people are going to recapture Shinjuku. She explains that Air-sama was the only one who accepted their request. She bows deeply, pleading with him and entrusting her senpai, Wizo, to him. Haruki understands and promises to give it his best. He thinks about how much her kuhai thinks of Wizo-san and wishes her to be safe. Haruki, in a state of panic, fears he might die today. He's looking at a forum post by Air, his own online alias, about a quest to rescue silver wolves in the Chikaho dungeon. The search is planned between the 6th and 8th floors, and the post has already garnered some page views and comments. He is met with a barrage of harsh comments, calling him a wimp and telling him to leave Japan. He is suddenly thrilled to be the kind of adventurer who receives comments. He considers the commenters to be gods and feels he must reply quickly. Despite the negativity, he earnestly thanks each person for their feedback, believing they are right. Filled with a newfound determination, Haruki declares that he will work hard today. However, in the dungeon, his partner unleashes a powerful blast that stuns him. She tells Karaboshi to get things done quickly. Haruki laments that he didn't get any chance to work hard because she is simply too strong. Haruki nervously asks Karen if her attack's area of effect was a bit too wide. She enthusiastically tells him to leave all the attacks to her. Haruki decides it's fine, as following others is one of his strong points. Karen thinks about how incredible Karaboshi is for not getting depressed by the insults on his blog. She resolves to help him this time to repay him for his help, seeing him as a good, if weird, person. With her enhanced magic, Karen's attack is almost too powerful, and Haruki has to ask her to lower the heat. They take a break for a meal inside the dungeon. Haruki mentions that the 7th floor boss was also a big wolf, but there are still no traces of Wizo-san. He concludes that they must move on to the 8th floor, and Karen agrees. Both Haruki and Karen are stunned by the sight before them. They have reached the 8th floor of Chikaho's dungeon, a vast field of tall grass. Haruki marvels at the mysterious, ever-changing layers of the dungeon. He notes that the tall grass is good for hiding, but will be a problem for their search due to poor visibility. Haruki discovers that there are traps hidden in the grass as well. He realizes that this search is going to take a lot of time. Suddenly, 2 silver wolves appear from the tall grass. As Karen prepares to attack, Haruki urgently tells her to wait. A long-arms goblin, a humanoid monster from the lower levels, reveals itself. Haruki is shocked, realizing it's not just a goblin but an owner. This type of goblin wanders aimlessly with a silver wolf, appearing as if it is walking the beast. Haruki urgently calls for Karen to come back from her advanced position. Karen tells Haruki to look at the state of the wolves. He sees they are full of wounds and identifies them as monsters from an abandoned hunt. These monsters continue to wander the dungeon, their hatred for the humans who hurt them growing ever deeper. Haruki shouts Karen's name, but she responds and continues her advance. With a determined expression, she prepares her magic. She leaps into the air, charging towards the monsters. Her powerful magic engulfs the 2 silver wolves. The goblin glares with rage. Haruki grimaces as he prepares for his own fight. He charges toward the long arms goblin. With his daggers ready, he closes in on the monster. He swings his weapon, aiming for a decisive blow. Haruki struggles against the goblin's powerful attack, exclaiming how heavy it is. The goblin's strength forces him back, and it quickly moves to flank him. The goblin dodges Haruki's attack. Its eyes are fixed on Karen in the distance. Realizing the monster is targeting his partner, Haruki desperately yells for Karen to back off. Haruki intercepts the goblin, vowing not to let it pass. He prepares for a final decisive strike. Haruki successfully defeats the goblin. However, he suddenly feels a wave of sickness. Karen calls out to him in concern. He reassures her that he's okay, explaining it's just level-up sickness. He notes that while fighting monsters is good for leveling up, taking them on one by one would be too time-consuming. He decides they should move on while carrying some items. Karen looks on in shock, asking what the item is. Haruki holds up the item, identifying it as a slimy eel. He explains to a bewildered Karen that it apparently keeps monsters away. He offers one to her, telling her to take it just in case. Karen wonders why he's bringing it out now, noting that their fighting is taking longer than she thought. Haruki notices she looks dead inside and asks if she's okay, to which she weakly agrees. With Ria now on his shoulder, Haruki feels prepared. Karen asks why he can't just use one eel, and he explains his arms are full. He insists that it has to be two. He cheerfully announces they are restarting the search. As he prances off, declaring the eels are super effective, Karen remarks that he looks more like a monster now. The woman grunts in pain, sweating from the effort. She has fallen awkwardly in the tall grass. She realizes with despair that her left leg is completely broken, leaving her unable to move or escape. She wishes she had some expensive medicine to help her. She regrets following the silver wolf to this place. She recalls that the quality of a monster's materials increases the deeper one goes into the dungeon. She had hoped that by acquiring high-quality materials, she could outdo the other branch manager. She laments that her desire to trample over her hateful rival Uetsuki led to this outcome. She drinks the last of her water. Now out of food and water, she notes her only salvation was the item she used to erase her smell. She laughs bitterly at her situation. She believes there is no way a search team would be sent for a normal person like her. She questions why she is even trying so hard to survive. Accepting that this happened due to her own carelessness, she resolves to maintain her grace. She would rather die clean than in a defiled state. She imagines being surrounded and torn apart by vicious monsters. The terrifying thought fills her with absolute horror. Overwhelmed by fear, she begins to break down. She screams that she doesn't want to die and begs for somebody to help her. Hearing a noise in the grass, she immediately fears that a monster is approaching. A strange creature appears before her. Haruki, covered in eels, tells her he's finally found her, while she wonders if he is even a person. Wizo recoils in disgust as she is covered in slime. From a distance, Karen tells a surprised Haruki that she thinks his fall was the cause of the incident. A woman with glasses, Wizo, lies injured in a field. She suddenly cries out in pain from a broken bone. A masked figure emerges from the grass, telling her she is finally awake. He introduces himself as Air, an adventurer who has accepted a quest to rescue her. Feeling dizzy, Wizo pleads for him to wait. Haruki shakes her, urging her not to pass out as it would be difficult to carry her. She recoils in terror, calling him a monster and telling him to let her go. Convinced he means her harm, she tells him to just kill her already, while a voice off-screen asks if she can stand. Haruki introduces his partner, Karen, and reiterates that they are on a quest to rescue her. He informs a surprised Wizo that her employees are waiting for her. Wizo exclaims in shock, looking down at her leg. She realizes with astonishment that her leg is healed. Karen confirms she used restoration medicine and asks if it worked properly. Wizo stands up, confirming she can walk on her own. She bows gratefully, thanking them profusely for healing her leg. Haruki tells her that if she wants to thank someone, it should be her company who paid for the quest. Despite his words, Wizo smiles and thanks him anyway. Haruki suggests they get going. He then offers her a slimy creature for protection, which she accepts with a scream of disgust. The group arrives at a large stone structure overgrown with vines. Haruki, covered in slime, identifies it as a gate. He explains that it's a device for traveling between adjacent floors in the dungeon. Uizo remarks that using the gates will get them to the surface quickly. Suddenly, Karen is impaled from behind, much to Haruki and Uizo's shock. Haruki shouts Karen's name in disbelief. An unseen voice remarks that he has finally come. A group of adventurers stands over Karen's fallen body, one of them greeting the masked bastard. Haruki stares in shock, realizing who his attackers are. One of the men holds Haruki at swordpoint, telling him not to move while an archer takes aim. He explains they told everyone not to sell materials to Uizo's store, using Masatsugu's name to ensure compliance. They were pleasantly surprised that Uizo came to the dungeon herself to gather them. Uizo realizes their actions are why fewer people have been selling to her. The men mock her for taking so long to figure it out. She angrily adds that they even hurt and released monsters. The archer tells her to shut up. Another adventurer is angered by their actions, noting that Masatsugu is helping somewhere else. Haruki demands to know why they are doing this. The man replies that they are having fun and that it's revenge. He explains that it's revenge against Uizo and Masatsugu for publicly mocking them, leaving Uizo stunned. Uizo furiously calls their actions ridiculous and questions if they think they can get away with it. The men claim they have done nothing wrong. She threatens to report them, warning that they will lose their adventurer certifications. The men laugh off her threat, asking what makes her think she'll get out of the dungeon. One of them, Lars, suggests they assault the two women, but another man points out he only ever thinks of that. Shikama agrees but calls Uizo an old hag. Lars declares that Karen is his. The archer expresses his preference for her as well. Lars approaches the unconscious Karen, suggesting they make a baby. He makes lewd and threatening remarks about assaulting her. Another adventurer mocks his boast, comparing his sword to a dagger. Uizo watches in horror, utterly disgusted by their behavior. Uizo is appalled that these men are adventurers. Uizo cries out for him to stop. Instead, he viciously kicks the unconscious Karen, shouting for the others to kill the masked man. Uizo can only watch in shock. Uizo yells for Haruki to escape and bring the special police. The men realize Haruki is gone. They wonder when he disappeared. Panicking, they recognize they are doomed if he reaches the surface. One suggests feeding the women to monsters to dispose of them. The men agree they must get rid of the evidence before the police arrive so they can claim Haruki was lying. Lars stands over Karen, ready to deliver a final blow. He raises his sword, lamenting about his love hole. Just as Lars brings his sword down towards Karen, his attack is blocked. A clang rings out as Haruki intercepts the blow. Haruki, now unmasked, stands protectively in front of Karen, leaving everyone stunned. The attackers are shocked to see Haruki. He urgently tells Uizo to take Karen. With a determined look, Uizo helps Karen up and urges her to run. The leader of the rival party yells for his men to kill them. The archer Heria lets an arrow fly. Heria's arrow is suddenly deflected midair. The attackers look on in confusion. Uizo carries Karen through the gate to safety. Haruki commends Ria, the flower on his shoulder, for a job well done. With the women safe, Haruki turns his attention to the attackers. They frantically search for him, demanding he show himself. Haruki, standing directly in front of them, wonders if their detection skills are non-existent. One of the men flinches as Haruki rustles the grass near him. The attackers finally spot Haruki, demanding to know when he got there and accusing him of hiding. Haruki, his face now revealed, calmly states that he has been there the entire time. The men accuse Haruki of getting in their way, while he points out he did nothing to them last time. They taunt him, noting that Masatsugu isn't here to protect him. Haruki agrees that he didn't do anything, then asks, so what? His demeanor shifts as he asks if they're ready for what's coming. They nervously try to dismiss their actions as a joke. Haruki coldly asks if hurting Karen so badly was a joke. One of the men claims it was an accident, begging for forgiveness. He then confronts them about the mean comments on his blog, asking if that was also a joke. He reveals he knows they were the culprits, as the number of unique visitors to his blog matches the size of their team. The attackers look at Haruki with pity, realizing he was happy just to get comments. Mortified, Haruki tells them to stop looking at him like that. He vows to never talk about his blog again. Suddenly, he senses a massive presence, wondering if it's a monster parade. The attackers realize the gravity of the situation and decide they need to escape immediately. A massive horde of monsters emerges from the dungeon walls, surprising everyone. The horde of monsters completely surrounds the adventurers. It is identified as an owner monpair. One of the men curses their luck as he prepares to fight. As the monsters close in, Haruki exclaims that they are being surrounded. He notices a system notification that his one-handed sword skill has leveled up. He realizes this is no time to be checking his skills. His status screen shows that his growth acceleration is maxed out. Haruki tosses the slimy eel high into the air. A horde of monsters rushes towards the gate. He tells the other adventurers to run to the gate, but they defiantly refuse his order. One of the adventurers blocks a large wolf with his shield. Haruki swiftly cuts down another monster. The archer finds himself mobbed by goblins. The four adventurers fight desperately against the overwhelming number of monsters. Haruki observes that their attacks are well coordinated. He thinks they might just get out of this alive, even as they yell at him to stop giving them orders. The archer reaches for more arrows but finds his quiver empty. A goblin grins maliciously as it snaps his remaining arrows in half. The archer Harrier is mauled by a wolf. Another adventurer is struck from behind by a goblin. Lars cries out as Shikama is taken down by the monsters. Haruki watches as the adventurers are completely surrounded, realizing that if this continues, they will all be wiped out. An adventurer vows to save his companion Harrier, while Haruki resolves to clear a path through the monster horde. One of the adventurers lies defeated on the ground, a victim of the overwhelming assault. The faces of the other adventurers are filled with shock and terror at the sight of their fallen comrade. One of the adventurers shouts in frustration, watching Haruki charge into the horde. He tries to warn Haruki that a long sword alone is not enough to face the monster swarm. Ignoring the warning, Haruki rushes forward as wolves descend upon another terrified adventurer. Haruki confronts the panicked adventurer, demanding to know what he is doing. Crying, the man explains that this is his first time fighting such a large number of monsters. Haruki explains that no one would be stupid enough to rush into a monster parade, but things are different now. He sternly tells the man that if he does not fight, he will die. Another adventurer tries to rally his comrade, reminding him that there are surely people he wants to rescue. The terrified man lashes out at Haruki, telling him to shut up and claiming that if he were not there, this would not be happening. He screams that they will be safe once they reach the gates. Ignoring the hostility, Haruki declares that he will help them fight even without their approval. The sheer scale of the monster horde becomes apparent, an overwhelming sea of creatures stretching as far as the eye can see. With Lars defeated, another adventurer despairs, believing the fight is impossible to win. The adventurers are surrounded by an endless horde that keeps coming, no matter how many they kill. He screams in frustration, questioning why this is happening. Haruki grimly realizes that even after killing over 300 monsters, their numbers are not decreasing at all. Another adventurer realizes the grim truth: the dungeon is absorbing the corpses, and he suspects the monsters they kill are being resurrected. Haruki wonders if this is not a normal monster parade. As another man is swarmed by the horde, he curses the vermin and questions what they did wrong. One of the adventurers breaks down completely, laughing hysterically in the face of certain death. With renewed determination, Haruki decides he will cut his way through the horde at full power. Ria, the creature on his shoulder, tells him to focus and look carefully. It explains that this parade must have a boss monster. Haruki's eyes widen as he spots a strange, glowing anomaly amidst the horde and wonders what it is. Haruki senses a powerful monster presence coming from the glowing bulge, but notices no new monsters are spawning from it. He realizes the creatures must be protecting the strange object. The horrifying thought dawns on him that this is the source of the endless horde. Haruki makes his way through the goblins towards the strange, pulsating mass. He hopes that destroying it will finally put an end to the relentless parade. He raises his sword high and strikes the core with all his might. The core explodes in a brilliant flash of light, sending a shockwave through the monster ranks. Immediately after the attack, Haruki stumbles, clutching his head as he is hit by a wave of level-up sickness. While Haruki is incapacitated, Ria shoots down the remaining goblins. Haruki thanks Ria, noticing that the monster corpses are no longer disappearing, meaning they are not being resurrected. Relieved, he decides it is time to head for the gates with Ria. A group of guards notes that everything went just as Masatsugu predicted. They comment that the people they were after were bad to begin with and wonder how many times they have been arrested. The captain laments that, as he thought, recovery would be difficult. He orders his men to capture the Shikama group at any cost. Suddenly, the captain is startled by something emerging from the gate. The captain is shocked to see a monster parade emerging from the dungeon. He orders his men to get ready to fire their crossbows. The guards spot a human figure among the monsters, telling him to wait. The captain is baffled by the sight of a floating mask and a plant. Haruki introduces himself as heir, an adventurer, and thanks them for their hard work. The guards wonder what to do, questioning if heir is with the Shikama group. The captain calls out to adventurer heir, asking what happened to the Shikama group. Haruki somberly apologizes, stating he could not save them. The captain, worried about friendly fire, asks Haruki to hold on while they evacuate the people. Haruki agrees to do his best. The captain orders all hands to prepare for close combat, making the rescue of people their top priority. As he gives orders, he notices a slimy eel on the ground. The guards maintain their formation as Haruki passes by, thanking them for their hard work. Once the area is secure, the guards surround Haruki, peppering him with questions about his dagger and his magic mask. Haruki confirms that the cute plant is a demon beast he tamed, much to their surprise. The captain silences his noisy subordinates, telling them to wait until they are on the surface to ask questions. He remarks on how strange it is that an average-looking adventurer took on a monster parade alone and has a demon beast as a pet. One of the guards remembers him, identifying him as a famous adventurer. The guards recall that Masatsugu had his eye on this adventurer, who is said to be close to the ranker's level. One guard finally puts a name to the legend, shouting out his infamous title, the Masked Pervert. Overwhelmed by the recognition, Haruki collapses. Uizo checks on Karen, who is resting in a makeshift bed. When Haruki arrives, Uizo apologizes for not recognizing him and thanks him for looking after Karen despite being tired. She says it is nothing compared to what he did to rescue her. Karen slowly awakens. She weakly calls out Haruki's real name, Karaboshi. She tries to sit up but winces in pain, and Uizo urges her not to move so much. Uizo explains to a concerned Haruki that while her main wound is healed, she lost a lot of blood. Uizo adds that most of the damage was avoided thanks to her armor, so she has no lethal wounds. She then changes the subject, mentioning that she heard Haruki survived the monster parade. She explains that the guards told her about it before he arrived and said he was amazing. Uizo tells Haruki that he doesn't have to be modest and deserves the praise. She adds that her feelings about those other adventurers are the same. She earnestly encourages him to be proud of himself. Haruki quietly thanks her. Later that night, Karen is overwhelmed with guilt, blaming herself for what happened. She believes that if she had not let her guard down, they might have all escaped. She thinks that if she had acted differently, Karaboshi would not have been forced into such a dangerous situation. Karen approaches Haruki and apologizes. He asks what she is apologizing for. She apologizes for being so weak and helpless. She breaks down, crying that if she had not been there, the situation would have been different. As she weeps, Haruki lightly slaps her on the head to get her attention. Haruki tells her he will hit her if she keeps saying such silly things, but she points out he is already hitting her. He tells her to stop thinking in terms of if only, asserting that the other adventurers were at fault. He then admits his own fault, apologizing for underestimating the enemy, which led to her getting hurt. Karen argues back that she should have noticed them from the rear. She cries out, wishing she was stronger. Haruki is overcome with his own regrets, thinking that maybe everyone would still be alive. He laments that if he had been more composed, or if he had helped them level up their skills, he might have been able to save them. He confesses that he was unable to save them at all, and is angry with himself. He takes her hands. He looks at her with fierce determination, and declares that they should get stronger together. Through her tears, Karen agrees. A young woman finds and reads a blog post by someone named Air, who cheerfully recounts completing a request and leveling up. The woman reading the blog thinks to herself that Karaboshi-san seems like a completely different person online, the opposite of his usual self. Elsewhere, a chibi version of Haruki celebrates ecstatically as his blog's page views increase to 5, renewing his vow to get stronger. On online forums, adventurers discuss finding the masked man, noting his floating cursed mask, a plant on his shoulder and a tentacle. Others talk about his rare tame skill and how he disappeared after rushing into a monster parade on the 8th or 10th floor. Haruki looks at his status screen with a concerned expression, thinking about a recent incident. A look at his skill board shows progress in several abilities, including the newly acquired kick techniques. He realizes that his spy skill has leveled up on its own. He recalls spending the 3 weeks after rescuing Wizo-san, leveling up inside Ikikahaj. He explains to his companion that his ability leveled up without him allocating any skill points. Haruki attributes the level up to the workouts he's been doing, calling it natural growth. His companion is thrilled to share that she's also gotten stronger, finding it easier to control her magical attacks. Haruki smiles, understanding the pleasant feeling of seeing one's efforts rewarded. As they enter the shop, the shopkeeper's welcome is cut short. Haruki and his companion stare intently at the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper clicks her tongue in annoyance. She tells them to leave if they are not buying anything. Haruki angrily demands to know if there is not something she should say to them. Flustered, the shopkeeper confesses that she has been worrying a lot. Her expression darkens as she explains her worry stemmed from them not returning. With a sinister smile, she declares that since they made her worry by making her think they were slaughtered, they should make it up to her. 10 minutes later, the shop is overflowing with monster materials, and Akin screams at Haruki for potentially destroying her shop. When she asks how many items he brought, Haruki smugly estimates around 5,000. He explains that the massive haul is the result of 1 month's work and that he wanted to see her reaction. Akin is reduced to tears while Haruki laughs, pleased with her response. Akin nervously calculates the total, adding a 5% bonus. Haruki impatiently demands the final amount. She screams that the total is 3,055,500 yen, calling them thieves. The enormous sum leaves Haruki and his companion stunned. A dejected Akin, crying over her ruined shop, asks what he wants now. Her mood instantly shifts to professional, as she asks what kind of defensive equipment he is looking for. Haruki specifies that he needs a full set of the best middle-class armor for Karen as they are heading to the intermediate floors. Excited by the prospect of a big sale, Akin agrees. Akin declares she will reclaim all the money she just paid him, while Haruki challenges her to bring her best items. Akin's expression becomes serious. She calls out to Haruki to get his attention. Hiding her face behind a clipboard, Akin brings up Wizo-san and quietly thanks him. Haruki is taken aback by her sudden change in tone. She blushes profusely, unable to look at him. He notices her ears are bright red. Haruki is so surprised by her behavior that he wonders if it will rain tomorrow. The 6th floor is filled with eggplant-like plants. On the 7th floor, they encounter roosters and melons. The 8th floor features fields of tall, leafy plants. Karen blissfully eats slices of fresh melon. Haruki, however, looks traumatized from his encounter with the rooster while gathering the fruit. Haruki asks Akin for her assessment of the boss's drop items. She identifies a stone as a magic item that produces heat, suggesting it could be used for cooking. Next, she examines some ivy, noting its high value and use in making bowstrings. Akin also presents the coxcomb and a necklace. Akin inspects the feather necklace, cautiously suggesting it might be a cursed item. Karen puts on the necklace and finds it has a positive effect, likely boosting her agility. Relieved, Akin eagerly brings out 2 cases of equipment. Haruki tells Karen it's time to go, but Akin frantically calls for them to wait. She opens a case to reveal a large, ornate dagger. The sight of the weapon shocks Haruki, reminding him of a past trauma. He lifts the heavy weapon from its case. Although it feels heavy at first, he quickly gets used to its weight and balance. Akin tells him it looks like the weapon has chosen him. She smiles knowingly. Haruki eyes her with suspicion. Karen models her new gear, finding it great despite being a bit hard to move in. Haruki, now with a full armor set, laments that his 3 million yen gain has vanished, while Akin laughs in the background. Haruki tells Karen it is time to go to the dungeon. Frustrated that Akin took all their money, he's eager to test their new equipment by hunting demon beasts. He announces their plan to enter the middle floors and explore the 9th floor today. Karen looks disappointed, having wanted to eat more of the melons found on the 8th floor. They arrive at the entrance to the 9th floor. Haruki advises Karen to be on guard, as they will likely encounter a new type of demon beast. A creature emerges from the tall grass. A large anteater-like beast stands up on its hind legs. Karen, however, finds the creature to be incredibly cute. The anteater beast attacks, spitting a stream of liquid at them. Haruki leaps over a tail swipe to shield Karen. He quickly lands and strikes the beast down. Haruki marvels at his new weapon, noting it cut through the beast as if it were paper. He turns to Karen. She apologizes, acknowledging that it was still a demon beast despite its cute appearance. They agree to advance further into the dungeon. They arrive at what they believe is the final chamber, the boss's room. Haruki speculates that the boss will just be a giant version of the anteaters they have been fighting. They are both shocked by what they see. A large, muscular, demi-human version of the anteater, holding a spear, confronts them. Haruki observes that the demi-human appears strong and is even armed with a weapon. Karen finds the creature scary, sensing the vast difference in their abilities. Haruki tells her she must overcome her fear. He believes Ria's bullets won't work on it. He instructs Karen on what to do, telling her to stay back and attack only when she feels it is necessary. Haruki prepares to move in. The boss whirls its spear with incredible speed. Haruki dashes forward, moving much faster than the creature anticipates. He blocks the huge spear with his dagger, the impact sending shockwaves through the air as Karen watches in disbelief. The creature is incredibly agile, leaping back to gain distance. The tip of its spear nicks Haruki's face. Haruki creates a copy of himself to attack from another angle. The copy lands a hit on the boss's head. However, the attack is ineffective, and the copy vanishes, leaving Haruki surprised. The boss is unharmed and now faces Haruki and Karen. The boss changes targets and rushes toward Karen. Haruki desperately calls out to Ria for help. The creature deflects Ria's attack with its spear. Haruki intercepts the boss, saving Karen. The boss retreats into the foliage. Haruki and Karen catch their breath after the intense fight. Haruki admits that the encounter was risky. He suggests they need to change their fighting style and possibly level up more. Noticing her silence, Haruki asks if something is wrong. With tears in her eyes, Karen asks why he saved her. Haruki is bewildered by her question. The scene flashes back to a large gathering of adventurers. Someone points out the Ranker group, Ariel noting how worn out they look. The leader of the group declares that they are in deep trouble. They are confronted by a massive horde of the anteater demi-humans. Haruki is taken aback when his companion asks why he saved her. She tearfully questions if she isn't reliable or strong enough. Haruki tries to explain that his actions are normal in a worst-case scenario. She passionately reminds him that they are partners. She asks why he rescued her at that critical moment if he didn't trust her. Haruki realizes she wasn't considering the situation to be that bad. She admits she is aware of her weaknesses but still wants to go on adventures with him. With tears in her eyes, she pleads for him to trust her. Haruki is unsure how to respond to her plea. Karen passionately tells him to just fight as he wishes. He hesitates, concerned for her safety, but she insists he should fight without worrying about her. Karen declares that he should leave the rest to her. After a moment of thought, Haruki agrees to count on her. Karen responds with a determined okay. He reflects that while he felt he had to protect Karen at all costs, he now understands that she is also his partner and a fellow adventurer. Haruki resolves that he just has to trust her and fight. Haruki's gaze is fixed on the enemy. Karen mirrors his fierce determination. A creature is distracted by Karen's magic in the background. Haruki sees the opening created by the distraction. Suddenly, another creature appears right in front of a surprised Haruki. Haruki strikes the creature, lodging his blade in its shoulder as it roars in pain. Haruki agrees to her plan. Karen declares that she will unleash magic spells while he attacks. Haruki recalls from their previous fight that the Slurpee is an intelligent demon beast and decides to use this against it. The creature swings its massive tail, but Haruki evades it. Haruki and Karen share a moment of triumph. They both suddenly collapse from a bout of level-up sickness. The defeated beasts have dropped spears of various sizes. Haruki notes that they can't use them as equipment since neither of them knows how to fight with spears. Haruki gives a small spear to Ria. Haruki excitedly declares it's time to head to the middle floor. They descend the stairs to the next level. They emerge from the stairs and stand on a grassy hill, taking in the new environment. Karen marvels at the incredible sight before them. She finds it amazing that they can see the sky despite still being inside the dungeon. Karen wonders where the path leads. Meanwhile, Haruki checks his skill board. His status screen shows a new divine skill called the Cloth. Haruki is ecstatic to see he has finally acquired a divine skill. Karen explains that it's a blessing from a god for reaching the middle floor. Both are utterly confused by the name, wondering if there is a god of clothes. Karen checks her own status and finds she also has a divine skill, the human being. Haruki admits he doesn't understand it at all, while Karen thinks it's still better than cloth. Ria also has a divine skill, the earth, which adds to their confusion. The next morning, Haruki yawns as he gets ready for the day. He sits down with a mug to do his morning check of his blog. He reads over his latest post about reaching the middle floor and becoming a middle-class adventurer. He then notices he has a new message. Haruki reels back, amazed by the concept of gods. He quickly tries to calm himself down to verify the message. The message is from someone named Kagemitsu, with the title calling for assistance. Upon opening it, he finds himself in a chat room where both he and Kagemitsu have joined. Kagemitsu apologizes for the sudden invitation, and Haruki admits he's surprised. He never imagined receiving a call from Kagemitsu, Hokkaido's top ranker, who modestly claims he isn't that famous. Haruki insists that Kagemitsu is a local legend, as famous in Hokkaido as bears and crabs. Kagemitsu takes it as a compliment, and Haruki asks why he's being called for assistance. Kagemitsu reveals that a monster parade is occurring on Chikaho's 10th floor. He wants Haruki to join the subjugation expedition, explaining that he heard rumors of Haruki defeating a parade. Haruki is hesitant, saying he's not that powerful, but Kagemitsu presses that they need to act to avoid a stampede. Haruki tries to decline, stating he's not strong enough and hasn't even fought on the 10th floor. Kagemitsu seems to accept this, but then mentions that Haruki would become famous just by participating in the strategy meeting. At the mention of fame, Haruki's resolve crumbles, and he frantically agrees to join. Arriving at a surprisingly plain building, Haruki realizes this is the home of Hokkaido's top ranker. He nervously rings the doorbell, introducing himself as Ersan, his adventurer alias. Kagemitsu welcomes them into a bustling room filled with people. Haruki, still wearing his mask, introduces himself as Air. He is immediately struck by Kagemitsu's charisma, feeling like an ant in his presence. Kagemitsu begins to introduce the members of his party, Ariel. He introduces Yoshi the archer, Becky who is also an archer, Van a long sword user, and the spear user Doroniko. Haruki introduces himself, but the team greets him timidly. Kagemitsu explains that they're acting this way because of his mask. He adds that they've heard rumors and find it scary to see in person. Kagemitsu remarks on Haruki's thin presence, assuming it's a skill that makes him unnoticeable without the mask. Haruki says he's wrong. He takes off his mask, revealing that he disappears from their notice, and exclaims that it's not a skill but how he was born. Kagemitsu grabs him, saying he knows how he feels. He passionately declares that his dream was to become a ninja. Kagemitsu laments that his own presence was too strong as a child, making him unable to hide. Haruki and the others look on, envious of Kagemitsu's popularity. A woman from the group interrupts, announcing it's time to start the meeting. Kagemitsu gets back to business, reiterating his request for Haruki to join the expedition and asking what kind of monsters they'll be facing. Kagemitsu explains that the parade is mostly composed of Slurpees, which Haruki has already faced. He adds that his team usually hunts on the 14th floor, so it should be easy for them. The real danger, he warns, is their boss. The boss is a lizardman, a rare and powerful monster typically found on the 30th floor. Haruki is jolted by the news of a 30th floor monster. He grabs a teammate's arm, questioning his usefulness in such a fight. Kagemitsu tells him that only he can do it. Haruki is shocked and asks why. Kagemitsu bluntly asks if he knows any other fool who would deliberately rush into a monster parade just to be famous. Haruki is shocked by Kagemitsu's directness. Kagemitsu explains another reason: most of the strongest adventurers are currently heading towards Shinjuku, leaving only beginners. Therefore, it's better to tackle the problem with a small, capable group. Haruki acknowledges that he understands the reasoning. The team assures Haruki that they don't have to win at all costs, and will retreat if it becomes too dangerous. Haruki expresses concern about his ability to cooperate after hunting solo for so long. Another team member promises their full support. The prospect of fighting alongside rankers excites him. Kagemitsu confirms Haruki's participation. Overjoyed and flustered, Haruki eagerly asks what he should do. The team is pleased that he's joining them. Kagemitsu looks at him seriously and gives him his assignment. He wants Haruki to deal with all the Slurpees. The request leaves Haruki's mind blank with shock. Keijimitsu clarifies that Haruki will go with Yoshi to deal with the monster parade while the main team defeats the lizardman. Haruki understands that he is the diversion, but is told he will be supported. Keijimitsu declares that their survival depends on Haruki, much to his shock. A party member reflects on Keijimitsu's character, noting he treats even lower-level adventurers as equals. Haruki sees this as a chance to compare his abilities to theirs. Keijimitsu explains they have 7 days until the operation and that Haruki will need to get used to the 10th floor's monsters. He informs the team that they will start on the 8th floor tomorrow and must take it seriously. Haruki tells Karen that he'll have to pause their dungeon exploration, but encourages her to explore freely. Karen smiles and thanks him for the consideration. As he finishes packing, Karen calls out his name, Karaboshi. After a moment of hesitation, Karen tells him to take care. Haruki smiles and cheerfully bids her goodbye. Karen watches as his car drives off into the distance. The first floor of the dungeon is crowded with adventurers. The crowd recognizes Keijimitsu and his party Ariel and greets them excitedly. Onlookers ask about their plans and notice that 2 members are absent. When asked about their 5th member, another adventurer points out Haruki. Wearing his mask, Haruki simply says hello to the onlookers. His appearance causes the crowd to scream in terror. Keijimitsu comforts a crying child, while another party member expresses envy. 2 of the party members note how Air's presence seems weaker around Keijimitsu. The group comes across the 9th floor's small boss monster. Keijimitsu offers to fight alongside Haruki to observe his fighting style. The team defeats the boss so fast that Haruki can't even see what happened. Haruki resolves that he won't miss anything the next time. Haruki is stunned by Keijimitsu's incredible speed, though he manages to follow the attack. Haruki mentally recounts their coordinated attack, culminating in Keijimitsu's final blow. Keijimitsu asks for his thoughts, and Haruki applauds, amazed by their performance. Inspired, Haruki feels a strong desire to fight. The group overlooks a clearing filled with a massive horde of monsters. Haruki confirms this is the parade, while Keijimitsu notes their numbers have increased. Another party member is shocked to see there are over 200 of them. Haruki looks at the horde and wonders if it's even possible for him to kill them all. He steels his resolve, telling himself he has to do it. Keijimitsu smiles and tells him it's time to get started. Haruki agrees, saying that he is counting on him. However, Keijimitsu tells him to wait a moment. Keijimitsu explains that it would be bad if the horde spotted them. When Haruki asks what to do, Keijimitsu tells him to wait and watch. Yoshi draws his bow and prepares to fire an arrow. The arrow lands in the bushes, away from the main group. The sound of the arrow gets the attention of a few monsters. Yoshi explains that he is isolating them from the main group little by little. Keijimitsu tells Haruki it's his turn to hunt them. He gives Haruki a stern warning not to be defeated easily. Haruki notes that the monsters are all focused on Keijimitsu's party. He calls on Ria for help. Keijimitsu tells him to show them what he's got. Haruki declares it's time for an adventure. He charges toward the isolated monsters. Watching from afar, Keijimitsu is impressed. One of his teammates remarks that he's never seen this dagger fighting style before. Another finds him interesting, as his style is different from the usual hit-and-away tactics of dagger users. They observe that he fights while staying in mostly the same place, without losing speed. One member comments that while he has little reference, Haruki seems like an expert. Yoshi agrees, judging him to be very strong and possessing good eyes. Keijimitsu concurs, but seems to have a reservation. Keijimitsu asks Yoshi for a time, who reports it takes about 1 minute to kill one of them. Keijimitsu determines that the pace is too slow, noting too many unnecessary moves. He starts to wonder if he made a bad choice. Yoshi grows concerned, stating that Haruki will die at this rate. Keijimitsu regrets not investigating Haruki more thoroughly beforehand. Suddenly, Haruki stops and plants his daggers in the ground. Keijimitsu and his teammate are startled by the sudden stop. They wonder if he's out of stamina or experiencing level-up sickness. As a monster approaches the vulnerable Haruki, Yoshi yells that they have to help. Just as the monsters attack, Haruki springs back into action. He deftly parries a spear thrust. The rest of the team can only look on in shock. Haruki continues his assault, dispatching another monster. The team watches in disbelief as Haruki stands over the defeated monsters. Haruki turns to Yoshi and asks for the next wave. A stunned Yoshi can only stammer out an okay. Yoshi asks how much longer he can possibly continue. Looking at the massive pile of defeated monsters, another member wonders how many he's killed. Keijimitsu, stunned, can only agree. Keijimitsu calls out to Haruki, whose adventurer name is Air. He suggests that they've done enough for now. However, Haruki ignores him and yells for the next wave. He continues his relentless assault on the monsters. As Keijimitsu moves in, Haruki intercepts the monster, declaring him too slow. The rest of the team looks on, completely shocked. Keijimitsu calls out to Haruki, whose adventurer name is Air. With a wild grin, Haruki screams for more. Keijimitsu watches, sweating, as he realizes Haruki is genuinely having fun. Keijimitsu shouts an order to Yoshi, telling him to lure more monsters before Haruki collapses. The others are shocked by the command. When Yoshi hesitates, Keijimitsu tells him to just do it. He tells Yoshi that it is his decision to make. Yoshi is shocked to see Haruki is now taking only 20 seconds per kill. His speed increases even more, dropping his time to 15 seconds. Keijimitsu watches intently, wondering how he is able to do it. The others agree that his performance is not normal. With renewed determination, Keijimitsu realizes that Haruki has just become the key to their plan.